Chapter 1077. After the captain finished speaking, he turned around, extended his arm and introduced, "There are a total of 4 rooms downstairs. The bed sheets in each room are new, and your names are pasted on the door. If you are tired from the discussion, you can go in and rest for a while. In short, it's raining outside and there are bushes nearby, so it's inevitable that there will be danger. If you want to go out, let the accompanying soldiers follow you. I'm afraid that I'll affect your discussion here, so I'll take my leave first." With that, the captain straightened his back and gave a neat military salute. Then he drove the military Hummer and disappeared in front of the villa. Other than the servants who stayed in the villa, there was no one else in the hall. The few of them sat in their seats. On the coffee table in front of them were beautiful fruits and desserts. A pot of delicious English black tea was still steaming when it was poured out. Because it had suddenly rained, the temperature had also dropped. Without the previous heat, it made people's arms feel a little cold. Drinking black tea was undoubtedly a good choice. It could warm one's stomach and calm one's mind. However, under such an atmosphere, no matter how wonderful the black tea was, it could not dispel the dull atmosphere in the villa in front of them. Master Zhang could not help but ask, "What do you all think?" The monk chanted Amitabha and his eyes seemed to be in a trance. "I keep having a very uneasy feeling." As if she had really sensed something, Leah reached out and grabbed the clothes in front of her chest. It was still raining outside. With the sound of banging, it could be seen that the rain was heavy. It almost made people wonder if there was hail in it. Master Zhang seemed to be shocked. He suddenly looked out of the window. "Will there be anyone outside this villa? They're all soldiers standing guard. There shouldn't be anything wrong." As soon as the monk finished speaking, he realized that the soldiers who had sent them here had already returned. After all, they could not guard here 24 hours a day. Master Zhang touched his chin. "I've also heard about the incident half a year ago that the minister just mentioned. It's not that simple. Some people say that the girl who drowned in the sea was not an accident at all. However, those students were indeed frightened. At that time, everyone was very scared. If Miss Song hadn't been smart enough to call the police, they might have had a mental breakdown. I've heard of this as well." Jing Zifeng also spoke, but his tone was very indifferent, completely different from Celestial Master Zhang's. In a few words, he summarized everything. When the police arrived, they found that they were all hiding in the room, not daring to come out. That night, they played a game, and the content of the game was to temporarily pawn their souls in exchange for whatever they wanted. In the end, the night after they finished playing the game, the girl who suggested playing the game was drowned. The strange thing was that the girl said that she was drowned, but her face was completely cut open, and the jewelry on her hands was gone. If it weren't for the fact that there were only a few students around, they wouldn't have been able to determine who the dead person was. At that time, it wasn't that no one had hired a yin-yang master, but the yin-yang master who was hired didn't see anything. He only said that it was strange and couldn't find the cause or any ghosts. Later, this matter was left unsettled until it was brought up again. "So there really is a ghost?" Master Zhang asked nervously. Jing Zifeng glanced in his direction. He was young and handsome. "Master Zhang has been killing demons and ghosts for so many years. What do you think?" "Me? Hee hee." Master Zhang realized that he was about to be exposed, so he immediately tried to smooth things over. "Even if there are ghosts, it's fine. I'm just worried that you juniors will be afraid when the time comes. After all, it seems to be too fierce this time. Ghosts that die in the water usually have a lot of resentment, so some people still have to be careful. Don't be like the 2 yin-yang masters and not return." Hellion Vivian had heard enough of the story. She said in a very calm voice, "Even if you don't return, the possibility of Master Zhang staying is the highest, right?" At that moment, Master Zhang felt that the girl in front of him seemed to be able to see through his disguise. He didn't like Hellion Vivian from the beginning. Now he was very upset and didn't want to see her. He immediately stood up and said angrily, "I'm going to my room to think about what to do tonight. Master Wufan, do you want to come with me?" The monk seemed to have had a lot on his mind since the beginning. Now that he was called by Master Zhang, he came back to his senses. He stood up tiredly and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. "I'm a little tired too. I'm going to rest first. I won't discuss with you anymore. I'll come out again when it's time for dinner." "All right, then I'll go in and rest too. I don't want to be upset when I see these people who don't know the rules." Master Zhang was the first to lock the door. Next was the monk. Their rooms were next to each other on the other side of the hall. There was a back door that led directly to the villa's courtyard. It had to be said that the layout of this villa was really good. The left and right sides were all connected. It was very suitable for living, but at the same time, it was very shady. Hellion Vivian's intuition told her that it wasn't a good thing to build a swimming pool so close to the house. After all, this wasn't a hotel and not everyone was like His Highness, who could suppress any kind of Yin energy. Seeing that Master Zhang and the monk had left, Leah returned to her room with the crystal ball in her arms. At this moment, only Jing Zifeng and Hellion Vivian were left in the living room looking at each other. Of course, there was also His Highness, who was drinking tea with his long legs crossed. He seemed to have sensed something and the corners of his mouth curled up. It was the unique evil of a demon. I smell the scent of crime. Hellion Vivian's hand that was sending a WeChat message paused. She moved closer to Beligaju and said in a low voice, I remember that there are many ways to sign contracts between demons and humans. That's right. Beligaju placed Hellion Vivian's hand in his palm and played with it. There was a smile in his tone. My respected master is getting smarter and smarter. Hellion Vivian was speechless. Why did he say it in such a mocking tone when it was obviously a compliment? Hellion Vivian grabbed his hand and took a bite. Her hair was still fluffy. So there really is such a thing as a soul pawn. Yes. Beligaju didn't like the presence of others when he was with Hellion Vivian. How could he put his master on his lap and hug her? The young man opposite him was a bit of an eyesore. Jing Zifeng saw Beligaju looking at him and realized that he was a little redundant. He walked into his room with a cup of black tea. Chapter 1078. Only then did Bailey Jiaju lift Hellion Wei up in his arms. As he spoke, his lips naturally landed on her ears. However, soul pawning is not pawning one's soul to the devil, but to the Grim Reaper. We demons are different from the Grim Reaper. We have always valued loyalty and will only sign contracts with souls that we are interested in. We are not like those Grim Reapers who like to accept boring souls and take pleasure in killing. If it's the Grim Reaper, everyone should be dead. Why is there only one death? Hellion Vivian tried to ignore the heat from His Highness's kiss. She lowered her voice. Hey, don't kiss me there all the time. Where? Beligaju's eyes were smiling. As if on purpose, he kissed her behind her ear. Here. Hellion Wei shuddered and thought to herself, forget it, if he wants to kiss, just kiss. She simply turned her head and hugged Bailey Jiaju's waist. She smiled brightly and said, and my forehead? Yes, my master. Beligaju lowered his eyes. His slender fingers brushed the strands of hair in front of her forehead. He kissed her gently. His eyes seemed to be able to reflect light. The smell on his body was very pleasant. It was a faint mint scent and the smell of roses. Demons had always liked red bouquets. The brighter they bloomed, the more they liked them. It was not strange that His Highness had the scent of roses. Hellion Vivian's nose twitched like a little hamster. I haven't finished asking the questions. There are still some clues to be found. The incident half a year ago is the key. As she spoke, she raised her head. Her eyes were shrewd. It seems that we need to ask the people who were present at that time. The students on the second floor. Hellion Vivian did not waste time. She immediately did what she decided. She pulled His Highness up. The two of them walked side by side to the second floor and knocked on the first door. That room was not locked. There was no one in the room. There was only a camera on the balcony. The owner of the camera was obviously not there. But where would he go on such a rainy day? Hellion Wei creased her eyebrows and immediately knocked on the second door. The corridor on the second floor of the villa was longer than that on the first floor. It was covered with a thick blanket and there was no sound when one stepped on it. The second floor was obviously much gloomier than the first floor. Many of the rooms couldn't be illuminated from the outside, not to mention that it was raining now. Come in. After receiving permission, Hellion Vivian retracted her gaze, pushed the door open and walked in. There were two boys and a girl sitting on the sofa in the room. The three of them opened a bottle of red wine and seemed to be discussing something bad. They thought that the person who knocked on the door was a servant, so they didn't pay much attention to it. Their expressions didn't change at all. All three of them had outstanding looks. Regardless of whether they were men or women, they all had small V-shaped faces, big eyes and high noses. They even looked a little like Korean stars in movies. Hellion Vivian's first reaction was that these people had more or less undergone minor adjustments. It wasn't that she was conservative. She didn't think there was anything wrong with plastic surgery to make herself more beautiful. However, because she was a medical student, she was very familiar with the structure of every inch of the human body. She could tell at a glance that anyone had undergone plastic surgery. You are? The girl stood up politely. When she saw Beligaju behind Hellion Vivian, her eyes lit up. How could there be such a good-looking man? God, he was more handsome than any star she had ever seen. The girl felt that her heartbeat was a little chaotic. Her eyelashes trembled slightly as she stared at Beligaju. The other boy also stood up with a face full of surprise. Brother Bing, are you interested in becoming a member of MK Entertainment? I promise that as long as you let me package you, I will definitely make you popular. Oh. It was a very indifferent word. His Highness had always been so cold when facing people other than Hellion Vivian. He put one hand in the pocket of his military uniform and didn't even look at the boy. The boy still wanted to try harder. Hellion Vivian stood in front of him and smiled professionally. Sorry, he's mine. Everyone present, regardless of whether they were boys or girls, was stunned by this sentence. Hellion Vivian curled her lips and continued to strike while the iron was hot. I'm a Onmyoji invited by the Song family. I'm here to ask everyone something. What's the matter? The boy frowned. Hellion Vivian looked at him and said with a smile, about the drowning incident half a year ago. What's the situation? Is there anything more detailed? The more detailed, the better. After hearing Hellion Vivian's words, everyone's face changed. Fear and paleness colored their lips. The girl said uneasily, why are you asking this? Didn't you say that there was a ghost? Hellion Vivian said airily, only after knowing the ins and outs of the matter, can I perform a better expiation? The boy sat down as if he was struggling internally. That day was like a nightmare to us. We shouldn't play that game. Soul Pawn. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. Then let's start with the game. Who proposed to play it? The boy lowered his eyes as if he had no strength. That's why she had an accident. This Wu Taotao, what does she look like? Hellion Vivian seemed to think of something and suddenly asked. The boy didn't understand why she asked this. He first tilted his head as if he was reminiscing. Long hair, small round face, very cute. But then she had plastic surgery. The girl interrupted. The first plastic surgery was for eyes, which cost her family a lot of money. Their family's conditions were not very good. She came from a single mother. It seemed that it was not easy for her mother to support her to go to school, but she didn't seem to think so. Every time she said that she had a round face like her mother, she wanted plastic surgery. Her mother couldn't do anything about it. She could only grit her teeth and keep spending money for her. Hellion Vivian heard this and frowned. Is plastic surgery really so important? Sometimes it's very important. The girl touched the back of her head awkwardly and said cutely, of course if she looks like you and your boyfriend, there's no need for plastic surgery. Especially your boyfriend, he's too handsome. Hellion Vivian chuckled. Thank you, but that Wu Taotao has been plastic surgery. Can her mother afford it? Of course not. The girl spread her hands and said helplessly, but what can I do? She's her mother's only daughter. There was one time when I saw her scolding her mother. She even pulled her mother's hair on the streets and said that her mother had no future at all. She was so poor all day because her mother didn't buy her the latest iPhone. Chapter 1079. When Hellion Vivian heard this, she frowned heavily. A girl who treated her mother like this, should it be said that the heavens had eyes to accept her? However, it seems that something happened to her mother later, and she received a large amount of insurance money. The girl continued, after she received the insurance money, the first thing she did was to take the money to get plastic surgery. We didn't see her for 3 months. That day she had just come back from plastic surgery and said that she wanted to go out and play together. She arranged everything so we just went there directly. Hellion Vivian paused for a moment. In other words, she was the one who suggested this trip? Yes. The girl nodded. We usually like to play and it was her birthday so we all went over. It was at the beach not far from the capital. If we drove we could go back and forth in a day. We drove 2 cars and even brought barbecue racks. We originally planned to play there for 2 days, but we didn't expect that kind of thing to happen later. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. Then what did she look like? Was she very beautiful? I don't know. The girl nodded and said, she just finished plastic surgery. There are some places that can't be infected, so she has to wear a mask the entire time. Only a pair of eyes can be seen. Those eyes are quite beautiful, right, Yunwoo? The boy named Yuanwu nodded. Yes, they're very beautiful. They look a little like Tong Tong's. To be honest, I like Tong Tong's eyes. Unfortunately, ever since she came back from the beach, she hasn't contacted us. Now she says that a ghost has followed her. It's really worrying. At this point, Yunwoo hesitated for a moment and looked at Hellion Vivian. Tong Tong won't be the next one, right? What? Hellion Vivian was still thinking about what the two girls had said, and her tone slowed down. What next? Yunwoo clenched his fists. Yunwoo clenched his hands. That game was very strange. It said that we could exchange our lives for anything. Wu Taotao was the first to sign the contract. In the end, she drowned that night. None of us knew what happened. She suddenly disappeared. In the early hours of the morning, we saw her floating on the surface of the sea with a face full of scars. The sea water hit the beach again and again. It was really terrifying. Now that I think about it, after signing the contract, Wu Taotao also said that something seemed to be watching her. At that time, we were so scared by her that we stopped playing after one round. Then we started playing Truth or Dare. Later on, we probably drank too much and fell asleep while playing. When we woke up, we found that everyone was still by the sea and Tao Tao was already dead. Are you saying that you fell asleep while playing? Hellion Vivian's eyes flashed. There were no signs at all. Yunwoo frowned and recalled. Yes, that day it was as if we were being controlled by something. Some of our memories are blank. That game is too problematic. So, can you please save Tong Tong so that she doesn't become the next one? I'll try my best. For Hellion Vivian, the question she was most concerned about had not been answered. Wu Taotao had clearly been drowned. But someone had used a knife to cut her face, and her face was completely unrecognizable. Most people knew how badly a wound soaked in salt water would be damaged. A girl's face being treated like this fully proved that she was envied by the murderer. There might be many reasons for jealousy. But in the matter of disfigurement, it expressed a desire in the heart. The murderer was jealous that the victim was prettier than her. Many criminal psychology books had mentioned this before. Women were the most unfathomable. Some people would even have killing intent in their hearts because the other party was prettier than them. This killing intent only needed to be fully hatched at the right time at the right place, and then it would completely erupt. Therefore this line was very important. Hellion Vivian tried to ask again, have any of you seen Wu Taotao's appearance after plastic surgery? I haven't seen it, Yunwoo said. She wore a mask all night, afraid that the sea breeze would infect her. The girl yawned. If you ask me, how can she be so delicate? She even ate roasted seafood at night. Why isn't she afraid of infection? Maybe she didn't do a good job and was afraid that we would see it. It's useless to say this now. Yunwoo lowered his eyes. I only hope that this nightmare can end as soon as possible. The other boy also nodded in agreement. The atmosphere was a little heavy for a while. By the way, where's the person living next to you? Hellion Vivian had just finished speaking. A scream that was enough to cut through the torrential rain came from downstairs. That scream was filled with fear. Hellion Vivian's first reaction was to run downstairs. Her speed was very fast, like a gust of wind. The remaining college students were dumbfounded. But everyone wanted to know what had happened. What was that scream about? Even old Master Song was alarmed by the sound of the stairs. Hellion Vivian was the first to reach the first floor. She looked around and quickly locked her eyes on the room where Witch Liao lived. The door was locked from the inside. The people who followed her were still anxious. Go get the key. Hellion Vivian didn't even think about it. She turned her long leg and there was a bang. The door was forcefully kicked open by her. Then they saw Leah sitting on the ground. The crystal ball she was holding was broken to the side. Her eyes were looking at the window. Her whole face was so scared that it lost all color. There's something there. Hellion Vivian looked in the direction of her trembling finger. In the pouring rain, a person was floating face down in the swimming pool in the backyard. Hellion Vivian's eyes shook and she immediately turned around. But it was too late. The guy floating in the swimming pool was obviously not breathing. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in such a position. The rain outside was very heavy, so much so that their vision was obstructed. In addition, the swimming pool was very big and there was a distance between them. No one could see clearly who the floating person was. It wasn't until old Master Song arrived that his face darkened. He asked the soldiers standing guard in the front yard to pick up the person. Only then did people see the person's appearance clearly. Master Wufan. Lia stretched out her trembling hand and covered her mouth. How could this be? Hellion Vivian's eyes also darkened. This was too strange. After all, even if someone was going to die, this master shouldn't have become the target of the attack. Why did they want to kill him? Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and looked at Beligaju. Is this what you said just now? You smelled the scent of a crime? Chapter 1080. Beligaju curled his lips into a smile. He had never cared about the life and death of humans. However, he said, it's a very interesting game, isn't it? Hellion Vivian analyzed the other meaning in His Highness's words. I thought that the murderer wasn't a ghost but a human. Beligaju chuckled softly and said meaningfully, that's right. But your expression doesn't seem like it. Hellion Vivian put on a fierce expression and warned in a low voice, don't always crush my IQ. Beligaju liked her when he saw her like that. His smile deepened. My master, how would I dare to crush your IQ? Hellion Vivian. Then what are you doing now? The murderer is indeed a human, but... Beligaju lowered his head and slowly said in her ear, there's a smell here that I don't like very much. It's just that it's covered up by the smell of humans, so I can't smell where it is. So, my master, for the sake of my nose from now on, you're not allowed to be more than 1 meter away from me. Hellion Vivian reached out and rubbed her ears. She sighed in her heart. His Highness was simply using his beauty to trick her all the time. Evildoer to evildoer. Beligaju watched as she kept rubbing her ears like a little phoenix that had been stepped on. As expected, teasing his pet was the most interesting thing to him. As for the other games, he would leave them to her. After all, the principle of raising a pet was to keep her interested at all times. Hellion Vivian didn't know how His Highness thought of this. If she knew, she would definitely feel quite helpless. Who would be interested in the murderer? Except for the person in front of her. But why? Why was the monk Wu Fan the first to die? The panic in the eyes of the university students was very obvious. They seemed to have seen the scene from half a year ago. At the seaside in the middle of the night, there was only a corpse floating on the surface. Call everyone to the hall. Old Master Song looked at this scene and ordered in a low voice, without my permission, no one is allowed to come close to this place. Xiao Liang, make a call and get someone who knows how to investigate to come over. Be quiet and don't let anyone else know. An adjutant holding an umbrella behind Old Master Song replied in a low voice, yes. The rain continued to fall and the muffled sound of thunder rang out. The sky was about to turn dark. Other than Song Tong Tong, who was being watched by the servants, everyone from every room came to the hall. Master Zhang still didn't know what had happened. He seemed to have just woken up and was still rubbing his eyes. When he saw the corpse lying outside, his legs were so weak that he couldn't move. Master Wufan Master Zhang couldn't believe that the person who had been sitting opposite him not long ago had died just like that. Old Master Song sat in the middle of the hall, holding his dragon-headed walking stick in his hand. His voice had also become deep. Things happened too suddenly. It seems that this place isn't safe anymore. I've gotten someone to call a car. Xiao Liang will be responsible for sending all of you back in a while. As for the 4 masters, you've also seen the situation. If you want to stay and chase after the ghost, I'll definitely reward you handsomely. If you want to leave, I'll also respect your choice. Zhang Tianshi wanted to leave, but the people sitting there didn't react at all. If he ran away just like that, how could he survive in the Yin-Yang world in the future? On the other hand, Leah spoke with a hint of worry. My crystal ball is broken. I'm afraid I won't be able to help Old Master Song. I need a new crystal ball before I can do the divination. Miss Leah has also suffered a lot of shock this time. Old Master Song glanced at her and said in an emotionless tone, just go back with the younger generation. Master Zhang opened his mouth and was about to speak. But he was interrupted by the young man beside him. It's not a ghost that kills people. Not a ghost? Master Zhang paused. He was waiting for Jing Zifeng to continue speaking. If it wasn't a ghost, what was there to be afraid of? As long as he could hold on until dawn the next day, he would receive a large amount of commission. How could he leave so easily at this time? My Shikigami didn't sense the existence of the ghost aura. Jing Zifeng's expression was very indifferent. Hellion Vivian's face revealed a playful expression. Shikigami? She also had one. His Highness should be considered a type of Shikigami, but he was a demon. Shikigami? Old Master Song frowned and looked at Jing Zifeng. The young man didn't waste time. He pulled open the backpack behind him and said, "Come out." A few small figures folded from paper jumped onto the coffee table one by one as if they were alive. "My Shikigami." Jing Zifeng's tone was the same. Hellion Vivian laughed and asked His Highness beside her, "There are such cute Shikigami." "The most basic ones." Beligage's eyes were very indifferent. "They are just pieces of paper." "Are they cute?" Hellion Vivian listened to His Highness's words and knew that she had to appease him at this time. "They are not as cute as you. They can't grow ears." Beligaju gave her an indifferent look. That was more like it. Hellion Vivian couldn't help but laugh in her heart. Oh my, he was even jealous of other Shikigami. Although it wasn't obvious, she still caught it. It was just because she said that the Shikigami was cute. The Shikigami could indeed understand human language, and Hellion Vivian had an aura that made people want to get close to her. Hearing her compliment them, the paper figurines lined up in a line and began to dance? Or was it Little Apple's dance? Everyone was stunned at this scene. Were their eyes playing tricks on them? Such funny Shikigami. Hellion Vivian laughed out loud. Only the young man's expression was very awkward. He pulled his Shikigami back and threatened in a cold voice, "If you go crazy again, you will go out and get wet." The paper figures immediately quieted down and stood on the table, not daring to jump again. Their little master was in the puberty period, so it was inevitable that he would be more violent. Well, they understood. Elder Song had never seen such a thing before. He had lived for so long and he had never believed in such superstitions. However, these pieces of paper that could move without any manipulation made him look at the young man meaningfully. If it's not a ghost that kills people, then what is it? People. Jing Zifeng didn't say much. As soon as the word people came out, the muffled thunder rumbled in the sky again. Xiao Liang, who was sent out by Old Master Song, ran in from outside. He looked at Old Master Song as if he wanted to say something, but because everyone was here, it was not convenient for him to speak. Old Master Song leaned on his walking stick. "Just say what you want to say. The road out of the villa is blocked by 2 broken bushes. People and cars can't go through. The rain is too heavy and the lake nearby has been rising. The villa's communication network is also cut off because of the rain." Chapter 1081. The cell phone signal is too weak. The other party can't hear you clearly after you make the call. We can't contact the car or the rescue personnel. We can only think of a way when the rain stops. In other words, we're trapped here. The girl's face was pale as she looked at Xiao Liang with flickering eyes. Xiao Liang didn't say anything. His attitude was basically a tacit agreement. At that moment, fear swept over them. The rain didn't stop and the sky was about to turn dark. Not only was the way out blocked, but their cell phones were also in a state where they couldn't communicate. Most importantly, there was a murderer watching them in the dark outside the villa. No one knew what his motive was and no one knew if he would kill again. Old Master Song was someone who had experienced great things, so he sat calmly. However, such a thing couldn't be ignored. "Xiao Liang, other than you, who else is in the villa?" Old Master Song asked his subordinate. Xiao Liang lowered his head. "Me and Adjutant Hong. Some of the rest returned to the army and some went to the city with the captain to buy things." In other words, there were only 2 special forces soldiers left outside the villa. There weren't enough people. Old Master Song was silent for a moment before saying, "The 2 of you go to the backyard and look around. See if there's anyone suspicious." "There's no need to go." Hellion Vivian, who had been silent all this while, said with a chuckle, "Because the murderer is in this villa. He's not an outsider." Everyone looked at Hellion Vivian. "What do you mean by that?" "The possibility of someone outside committing a murder is too small." Hellion Vivian analyzed calmly. "This place isn't easy for others to find. Moreover, before we came, this place was very heavily guarded. The armed forces are all standing guard. It's raining so heavily, so it's impossible for anyone to be hiding nearby. Therefore, the murderer must be in the villa." The girl trembled when she heard this. "You're saying that he's hiding here?" "I'm saying that any one of us could be the murderer." Hellion Vivian's voice was very calm. Master Zhang shouted, "What kind of joke is this? There's nothing impossible about that." Old Master Song was the most stable one. He indirectly agreed with Hellion Vivian's deduction. All the students present, including Celestial Master Zhang, Leah, and the two servants, were scared. The murderer was among them? Then who could it be? If you don't mind, I would like to ask this friend a question. Hellion Vivian walked to the side of a female university student. You weren't in your room just now. It's raining so heavily. Where did you go? The female university student didn't expect Hellion Vivian to suddenly ask her. Her fingers paused for a moment before she said, I'm just taking a walk. While you were walking around, someone died. Hellion Vivian said unhurriedly, what we are looking for now is an alibi. My assistant, your 3 classmates, and I were all in the room, but you weren't. Immediately after hearing this, everyone looked at the female university student, including Old Master Song. The female university student bit her lip and said, I went to the attic that department head Song told us not to go up, which was Tong Tong's room. I was very worried about her, but when I knocked on the door there was no one, so I went back to my room. Did anyone see you go there? Hellion Vivian continued to ask. The female university student shook her head. No, the servants weren't there at that time. I deliberately avoided the servants. I wanted to know what happened to Tong Tong. It's nothing. It's just that as soon as she came out, she said that she was afraid. When she saw people, her whole body would tremble. Department head Song sighed. Even her meals were brought up by the servants and sent in through the wooden door. This situation has been going on for more than a month. I only found out this week. The doctor said that it's a psychological barrier. It's best not to let her be agitated again. The female university student bit her lip. Is it a psychological barrier? No wonder I keep feeling that she's becoming less and less like her. Ever since she came back from the seaside, she's been a little different from before. We thought that she was the strongest one, but it turns out that she didn't get through it. Don't change the topic. Jing Zifeng's voice was very cold. You don't have enough evidence to prove that you're not a suspect. The female university student laughed. What do you mean? Are you suspecting me? Everyone here is worthy of suspicion. Hellion Vivian continued the conversation. So far you're the most suspicious, but there are 2 other people. Celestial Master Zhang, did you really fall asleep after entering the room? And Miss Leah, you should have also gone out. It was raining so heavily. What did you do outside? Leah suddenly looked up, her eyes a little fluttering. I don't understand what you're talking about. There are traces of water in your room. Hellion Vivian looked at her. Her clear eyes seemed to be able to see through anything. The slippers are also wet. The bathroom is very clean, which proves that you didn't take a shower. Instead you went out. The girl who had chatted with Hellion Vivian previously exclaimed, You can even deduce this? How smart. All of them were afraid. How could they have the time and mental fortitude to pay attention to this? The beautiful girl in front of them was really too handsome. Leah saw that everyone's gazes were on her, so she immediately explained in a gentle voice. The signal in the room was too bad. I just wanted to go out and make a call. Later I realized that it was the same outside. The conversation was intermittent, so I returned to the room. What about Celestial Master Zhang? Hellion Vivian looked up. You should have been to Master Wufan's room, right? After all of you entered the room, we went up to the 2nd floor. You saw Master Wufan again, right? There were 2 cups of tea in Master Wufan's room. One of them was the cup you took from the hall. Then he drowned. Celestial Master Zhang's face was red and he looked very angry. You're asking us this and that. Why don't you tell us where you were when Wufan was killed? Is Celestial Master Zhang's head made of tofu? Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and said domineeringly, Didn't I just say that the few of us were chatting on the 2nd floor? If you continue like this, I can only treat you as the number 1 suspect. Celestial Master Zhang clenched his hands tightly. He was very unwilling, but he wasn't so stupid that he couldn't see the situation. He took a deep breath and said, I did go to Wufan's room. I wanted to discuss with him what to do tonight, but after a few words he kept looking outside. In the end, he told me that he was waiting for a call and that he still had something to deal with. Chapter 1082. There's something to deal with? Hellion Wei Wei repeated this sentence, her long, shapely eyebrows creased. Master Zhang nodded. When I saw that he wasn't in the mood, I didn't say anything else. After returning to my room, I also fell asleep. Not long after I fell asleep, Adjutant Liang knocked on the door and told me to gather. Everyone seemed to have an alibi, but no one could prove whether their alibi was true or not. The female university student Leah, Master Zhang. Wait, there was one more person. She had never met the daughter of the Song family, Song Tong Tong. No one could confirm for these 4 people where they were when Master Wufan died. Let me tell you my suspicions. Hellion Vivian didn't hide it because what she was going to say next was mainly to tell department head Song. Other than these 3 people, there's also your granddaughter, Miss Song, who doesn't have an exact alibi. Department head Song frowned. What does this have to do with Tong Tong? She hasn't been out for a long time. But no one can prove that she didn't come out during that time, right? The servants weren't there. Hellion Vivian's voice was calm. Department head Song had to admit that there was indeed such a possibility because of the rationality of the girl in front of him. However, he said, don't forget Tong Tong is the victim this time. Department head Song is right. Master Zhang sneered. Little girl, why don't you talk about Jing Zifeng? No one can prove that he didn't go out during that time, right? You're really whimsical. Instead of suspecting the person you should suspect, you're suspecting Miss Song. The cold young man who was named raised his eyes and glanced at Master Zhang. You can also list me as a suspect. It doesn't matter. His voice was very indifferent. It was as if he didn't take Master Zhang's words seriously at all. You heard me. Hellion Vivian chuckled. The more she looked at the young man opposite her, the more she liked him. However, from her point of view, this young man was the least likely to be the murderer because if he really wanted to kill someone it would be too simple. He could use his Shikigami to kill someone without anyone noticing. Among the few famous ghost-chasing masters who came, only this young man was capable. Some of the others were just pretending while others only knew some small tricks. The person that Hellion Vivian had suspected from the beginning was Jing Zifeng. He was really here to catch ghosts. She still needed to investigate what the others were hiding. The sky outside was getting darker and darker. The sky was about to turn dark, but the torrential rain showed no signs of stopping. If it wasn't for the rain today, the Special Forces soldiers in the front yard might have noticed something. At the very least, they would have heard something. Unfortunately, this rain was heavy and rapid, mixed with the rumbling sound of thunder, completely covering the sound of the murderer's murder. However, if Celestial Master Zhang wasn't lying, then Wu Fan's time of death should have been after Celestial Master Zhang left. No water stains were found in the victim's room. In other words, the victim walked out of the room by herself. Why did he want to go out? It was raining heavily outside. When Hellion Vivian thought of this, she suddenly paused. Celestial Master Zhang said that before he left, the victim said that someone was looking for him and that he still had something to do. Normally, everyone would think that since he came to the villa, he should be waiting for a call from the company. But in fact, there was no signal here. Only the phone in the villa was connected. In other words, the person who arranged to meet Master Wufan was in the villa. He used the internal phone in the villa that wouldn't leave a call record to ask Master Wufan out and then killed him. If that was the case, then there was a basic premise. The person who committed the crime at least knew Master Wufan. Moreover, there must have been a deal between the two of them that no one else knew about. Hellion Vivian looked up and looked at the 4 suspects in front of her. She crossed out Celestial Master Zhang from the suspect list, leaving only 3 girls. It couldn't be Celestial Master Zhang. The murderer must have called Master Wufan after he left. The rest of the people were hiding some secrets. And one of these secrets was very likely to be evidence of murder. The hall fell into a deadlock for a moment, and uneasiness filled everyone's hearts. As the owner of the villa, Old Master Song naturally wouldn't let things continue like this. No matter what, everyone should eat something first. The road won't be blocked forever. There will always be a solution. As he spoke, he said to the servant at the side, Auntie Zhang, go and prepare. Let these children eat first. Auntie Zhang seemed to be thinking about something and didn't hear Old Master Song's words at all. Auntie Zhang. Adjutant Liang couldn't help but raise his voice. The minister is calling you. At this moment, Auntie Zhang came back to her senses and replied, Yes, I'll go and prepare now. There was something wrong with this servant. Almost immediately, Hellion Vivian's gaze locked onto Auntie Zhang. She looked at the back view that was full of worries and narrowed her eyes. She stood up and said to everyone with a light smile, I'll go take a look. Maybe I'll find something and catch the murderer as soon as possible. Department head Song didn't object. In some aspects he still believed in this young lady's reasoning. Let Xiao Liang follow you and you can avoid danger. Thank you, Department head Song, but there's no need. My assistant is very versatile. With him by my side I'll be safe. Hellion Vivian wasn't lying. However, no matter how one looked at Beligaju, it was hard to believe that his hands were stained with countless blood. Most importantly, his temperament was too good. Especially after wearing a military uniform, a certain highness had a noble and not evil aura. Such a person could be a commander, but he shouldn't be able to fight, right? The girl moved closer to Hellion Vivian and said, "You should bring that special forces soldier with you. What if your boyfriend is ambushed?" The girl thought that Hellion Vivian would definitely be worried if she said this. Unexpectedly, she laughed and said in a very pleasant voice, "That's great. If the murderer can be so stupid as to walk into the trap, I won't have to waste any more effort to find her." Everyone who ambushed a certain highness didn't seem to end well. It had been a long time since she saw a certain highness beat someone up. She was really looking forward to it. The girl was dumbfounded. What was going on? "All right, little girl, I'll give you a task. Let's have a secret conversation." Hellion Vivian leaned over and whispered to the very lively girl, "Help me pay more attention to who will leave the hall after I leave. Because only the person who leaves the hall can be the murderer." Chapter 1083. "Ah," the girl said with a blank face. However, Hellion Wei Wei did not expect her to watch over her. With Jing Zifeng around, he would tell her if anything happened. Hellion Vivian smiled and disappeared from the hall with Beligaju. What she didn't know was that after she left, a pair of eyes hidden in the darkness faintly glowed as they looked at her from behind. "Sister Zhang, do you need my help?" It turned out that Hellion Vivian didn't go anywhere but came to the innermost kitchen of the villa. Sister Zhang was hiding something in her heart. Hearing Hellion Vivian's sudden call, the spoon in her hand accidentally fell to the ground. Hellion Vivian looked at her action. Sure enough, there was something wrong. "No need." Sister Zhang turned around and smiled at Hellion Vivian awkwardly. "It's easy to cook for so many people. Captain Jiang didn't come back. I wanted to cook a table of dishes for everyone. Now I can only change it to chicken curry and a soup of winter melon balls. You can drink it later to warm up." Hellion Vivian smiled and said okay. But she didn't leave. She sat aside, supported her face with one hand and looked at Sister Zhang with a smile. Anyone who was looked at like this would feel a little uncomfortable. Sister Zhang turned on the stove. She was stunned when she turned around. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. I just want to talk to you about something." Hellion Vivian smiled. "Sister Zhang, you've been working in the Song family for a long time, right?" "Well, I've been working in the Song family since you were born. It's been 20 years. Aunt Zhang responded gently. She thought that Hellion Wei Wei was hungry, so she took a vegetarian meatball that she had just prepared and handed it to her. "Eat some first." After doing this, she seemed to think of something. She wiped her hands on the apron and explained, "It's not dirty. I just washed my hands. I'll get another one." Hellion Vivian didn't wait for her to change. She directly held Sister Zhang's wrist and bit the vegetarian ball in her mouth. "It's delicious, but it's a little hot." Sister Zhang smiled and was not as restrained as before. "There's a lot here. Miss used to like it very much." After Hellion Wei Wei ate the vegetarian meatball, she took another one and turned around to feed it to His Highness who was standing behind her. His Highness obviously refused this kind of thing. "You eat it." Hellion Wei Wei looked at him as if he didn't know what was good for him and stuffed the vegetarian meatball into her mouth. Her cheeks were bulging. "You look like the Miss used to be. You're so cute." Hellion Vivian couldn't stand the old woman's praise. The tips of her ears were a little red. But even so, she still didn't forget the purpose of her visit. "Sister Zhang, do you know something but don't tell me?" Sister Zhang suddenly froze. She looked at Hellion Vivian. It seemed that she didn't expect that a girl younger than the Miss could be so smart. "Is it about Miss Song?" Hellion Vivian's next sentence went straight to the point. In fact, like what Director Song said, she didn't go out even once, right? "Yes." Sister Zhang sighed and was a little absent-minded. "The Miss fell from upstairs some time ago. The wound on her face hasn't healed yet. She doesn't go out often, but sometimes she comes out. Master doesn't come home often and doesn't care enough about the Mississippi. The Miss lost her parents when she was young. She played with herself when she was young. It wasn't easy to wait until she entered high school to have a group of good friends. Unfortunately, it was fate. Since she came back from the seaside, she was upset and seldom came home. She always went out to play. Sometimes she would bring some people to the courtyard. I know that the miss is too lonely and wants someone to accompany her. But looking at the miss like this, I really feel sorry for her. So you helped her hide the fact that she just went out of the room? Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. Sister Zhang immediately paused and then said excitedly, "No, the miss. Miss, you have to believe me. A person like the miss won't kill people. Even if she has changed, she won't hurt others. I didn't say that she must be the murderer." Hellion Vivian comforted Sister Zhang. "There are so many suspects now. Miss Song is just one of them." Sister Zhang supported herself on the chopping board and heaved a sigh of relief. Then she heard a clang. At this moment, all the lights in the villa dimmed. Hellion Vivian's intuition told her that something was going to happen. She didn't stay in the kitchen any longer. She immediately stood up and strode to the living room. What's going on? Why is there a power outage? Did the power switch off? It can't be. There's no electricity in the villa at this time. What should we do? Old Master Song was still sitting in his original seat. He pressed down hard with his dragon-headed walking stick. Be quiet. Fortunately, he could control the situation. Otherwise, once the power went out, the people in the living room would run around and it would only give the murderer an opportunity to take advantage of. There weren't many candles in the villa. There were only a few short red candles lit when they were eating Western food. Sister Zhang immediately took them to the living room, lit them all and put them on the coffee table. Hellion Vivian turned on the flashlight on her phone and used the light to scan the area. She narrowed her eyes. Where are the female university student and Leah? They went to the toilet. The girl didn't forget what Hellion Vivian asked her to do. Wei Wei's long, shapely eyebrows furrowed tightly at this moment. Immediately after, a scream came from the toilet. This time, Hellion Vivian wasn't the first to arrive. The first person to arrive was Jing Zifeng. Hellion Vivian had said more than once that this young man was very smart. He was indeed smart. After Leah and the female university students said that they wanted to go to the toilet, he followed behind them. At this time, anyone who acted alone was worth paying attention to. However, even he didn't expect that the villa would have a power outage at this time. Seeing that there was nothing in the bathroom, he knocked on each of their doors and told the two women that he had to leave for a while and go back to find something to light up the place. The two people in the bathroom also agreed. Unexpectedly, he had only left for 3 minutes when the screams behind him rang out. Jing Zifeng didn't hesitate. He immediately turned around and ran in the direction of the toilet. He pushed the wooden door with all his strength. When he saw that he couldn't open it at all, his eyes changed. With a sudden force, a sword formed by chi faintly appeared in his left hand. Chapter 1084. A loud bang was heard. The energy sword fell and split the wooden door in half. Hellion Vivian's guess was right. If this young man wanted to, he could kill anyone in the villa except her and His Highness in an instant. When Jing Zifeng barged in, the female university student's hands were full of water. Her fingers were trembling in fear as she pointed out the window in fear. There's someone there. Someone is standing outside the villa. Jing Zifeng looked up. He could vaguely see a figure in the rain. Moreover, that figure seemed to be dragging something in its hand. Just as the young man was frowning, the group of people behind him also arrived. A bolt of lightning fell. Through the ventilation glass window, people finally saw what the figure was dragging. It was a person. Because of this scene, everyone's eyes were filled with unprecedented fear. Who was the person she was dragging? Who was missing? Miss. Auntie Zhang covered her trembling lips. The person she was dragging was wearing Mrs. clothes. Department head Song's expression changed. Xiao Liang. Yes. Deputy Liang didn't stop at all and immediately rushed out. Logically speaking, the speed of a special forces soldier should be very fast, not to mention that the other party was dragging someone. Although the structure of the villa was a little complicated, it was not convenient for him to track them. However, Deputy Liang still accurately determined the person's location. However, he watched as she dragged the person around a corner. When Deputy Liang chased after her again, she disappeared. There was not a trace of her at all. Even though he was from the army, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat when he saw this strange scene. After returning, Deputy Liang's entire body was drenched. He told him everything that he had seen just now. Old Master Song's back trembled. He reached out and clutched his chest. Tong Tong, my granddaughter. Department head. Deputy Liang immediately supported his superior and quickly took out the medicine box he carried with him. He poured out a few pills and had Department Head Song swallow them. After taking the medicine, Department Head Song slowly recovered. However, it was obvious that he no longer had his previous spirit. White hair slid down his forehead and he looked like he had aged many years in an instant. It's her. She's back. The female university student suddenly shouted and grabbed Yuanwu's collar. You saw it too, didn't you? That person just now, that person's back view, and the clothes she was wearing were clearly Wu Taotao's favorite clothes in the past. He must be back. She wants to take us away, take all of us away. Wu Taotao. Hellion Vivian turned her head to look at the 4 students present. Every one of them had a nightmarish look of fear on their faces. It's her. The lively girl's lips turned pale. It's really her. What should we do? Xiaoqing, what should we do? Is it because the game wasn't finished yet? The female university student named Xiaoqing shook her head. I don't know anything. Are we going to die? Are we going to die? Hearing the word die, the girl suddenly shivered and denied, no, there's no reason for that. My grandmother said that if you don't do anything wrong in your life, you won't be afraid of ghosts knocking on your door in the middle of the night. She has no reason to take us away. But she has already taken Tong Tong away. Next, who will be next? Xiaoqing seemed to have thought of something and her eyes suddenly shook. She pointed at herself and said, it's me. I'm the 3rd person to sign the contract. The next person she's going to take away is me. Hellion Vivian frowned. No, it shouldn't be in this order. Xiaoqing, calm down. The girl reached out and hugged her good friend standing in front of her. It's okay, we'll all be okay. Master and the others are here, right? When Xiaoqing heard the word master, she suddenly raised her head and looked at Hellion Vivian. It's all because of you. You said that the murderer wasn't an outsider but one of us. Now it's okay. Tong Tong is going to be killed because of you. If you don't know how to catch ghosts, then say there are no ghosts here. You liar. What on Myoji-ba? You're just here to make money. Facing the female university student's accusation, Hellion Vivian didn't even blink. She was as calm as ever. Xiaoqing was so angry that her eyes were red and tears kept flowing. Do you know how many years we've known Tong Tong? Return her to us, you liar. You big liar. Say. As if he didn't want to cause enough trouble, Master Zhang pretended to sigh at the side. I've long said that the malicious spirit in the villa isn't easy to deal with, but these juniors think very highly of themselves and even suspect that we're the culprits. Now I can only do something and try to see where this evil spirit has gone. After such an incident, Department Head Song's thoughts were in a mess. He didn't say anything, but it was obvious that he no longer trusted Hellion Vivian as he did in the beginning. This was the effect that Master Zhang wanted. He wanted to put on a show in front of Department Head Song. As for that evil spirit, he didn't dare to really catch it. After a while he stayed in the crowded hall. With so many people, it wouldn't be so easy for the evil spirit to make a move. Master Zhang's plan was good. Right now, these university students needed someone to jump out and do a ritual, especially Xiaoqing. As she brushed past Hellion Vivian, she glared hard at her. Liar. Beligaju obviously wanted to move. However, Hellion Vivian held his hand and interlocked their fingers. Her eyes were clear. Whether you believe it or not, there's no aura of a malicious spirit here. The murderer has always been a human. Young lady, it's already good enough that Department Head Song didn't lock you up or ask you to get lost. Why are you still insisting on your fallacy? What's going on? Master Zhang gritted his teeth. Without waiting for Hellion Vivian to turn around, she met Master Zhang's eyes. A loud thump was heard. Master Zhang seemed to have been attacked by some invisible gas. He knelt on the ground with a loud thud. Even his chin hit the threshold heavily. It was so painful that tears streamed down his face. He bit his tongue and his mouth was deformed from the pain. Hellion Vivian didn't need to look to know that this was the work of a certain highness. Jing Zifeng seemed to have noticed something as well. He suddenly turned to the side and stood in front of Beligaju. Who are you? Just now, the exorcist's sword on his back was trembling. This man who looked incomparably elegant was definitely not a simple human. Chapter 1085. Hellion Vivian patted the young man's shoulder. Child, the most important thing now is to catch the murderer. Someone committed a crime in front of you. Can you tolerate this? The young man immediately withdrew his gaze from Beligaju. Of course he couldn't tolerate this. Beligaju looked at him with a faint smile, opened his mouth and bit off the black glove on his left hand. He said casually, "Get out of my way." Hellion Vivian grabbed His Highness again, and then met Jing Zifeng's probing gaze. "Didn't I tell you? He's my assistant." Jing Zifeng looked at her. His eyes were clearly saying that her assistant wasn't human at all. Hellion Vivian patted the young man's shoulder. Child, the most important thing now is to catch the murderer. Someone committed a crime in front of you. Can you tolerate this? The young man immediately withdrew his gaze from Beligaju. Of course he couldn't tolerate this. When the matter here was settled, he would ask this man. He would go and find the murderer. After thinking, Jing Zifeng turned around and left, leaving his Shikigami behind. The little Shikigami around the young man were speechless. "Damn it, little master, you're leaving. This person is clearly a Shikigami." As if he sensed the thoughts of the Shikigami, Beligaju bit off his other glove with a faint smile, and looked at them with half-curved eyes. Those little Shikigami immediately straightened their backs. One by one they raised their hands, put them on their soft and flat faces, and made a gesture of shutting up. But in their hearts they were crying. "My little master, even if you want to leave, you should take us with you. Don't you see that your cute Shikigami are missing? Ooh, the big devil." They had actually encountered the legendary Great Devil. How unlucky were they? Sensing the fear of the little Shikigami, Hellion Vivian bent down and put them all into her sleeve. Then she glanced at His Highness, which meant that he didn't want to scare them. Of course, Beligaju wouldn't argue with these little people. The only one who made him want to kill was Zhang Tianshi, who didn't know why he suddenly knelt down. His entire leg was in pain. After meeting the surprised gazes of the university students, he waved his hand in order to save his face and said, "The ground is too slippery. If you're not careful, you'll fall. Be careful." Hellion Vivian sneered but did not expose him. However, there seemed to be one person missing. Hellion Vivian suddenly looked back. Wait a minute. Leah isn't here either. Upon hearing Leah's name, Celestial Master Zhang's pained expression finally changed. Xiao Ting sneered, "Now this Master Hellion knows how to be nervous. Don't worry, she came with me. She's still in the bathroom next door." Hellion Vivian didn't relax her vigilance because of her words. She strode into another bathroom. The door was locked from the inside. She couldn't pull it open at all. "Miss Leah? Miss Leah, are you in there?" Celestial Master Zhang couldn't help but go forward and knock hard on the door. There was no answer. Everyone's hearts were in their mouths. Could something have happened to Leah? Hellion Vivian's eyes darkened. He wanted to kick the door open. "I'm here." Perhaps because of fear, Leah's voice was trembling and hoarse. "I don't dare to go out. It's too scary. The power is off. I don't dare to move at all." It seemed that the news about Leah on the internet was true. It was said that although this witch could predict ghosts and good luck, she was very afraid of the dark. Once she was in the dark, her entire body would stiffen. She didn't even dare to speak, let alone move. Celestial Master Zhang heaved a sigh of relief and said, "It's okay. We're all outside. Don't be afraid. You can see everyone when you come out." A rustling sound came from the bathroom like the sound of a skirt zipper. Hellion Vivian and Celestial Master Zhang could hear it. The latter's face was a little hot and no one knew what bad things he was thinking. After a while, Leah opened the door with trembling hands. She was scared out of her wits. When she saw that there was someone outside the door, she immediately threw herself into Celestial Master Zhang's arms. With a beauty in his arms, Celestial Master Zhang was naturally overjoyed. He reached out and patted her back. All right. It's fine. It's all in the past. I saw someone outside. She was dragging something with all her might." Leah trembled. "My sixth sense tells me that this person shouldn't be here at all because she died a long time ago. She died by the sea." When the 4 university students heard this, their faces turned even paler. Unlike Celestial Master Zhang, Miss Leah was especially popular on the internet and was very popular with young people. They had seen with their own eyes how she was a live-streamed fortune teller on the internet. She was extremely accurate. Now even she said that the person who dragged Tong Tong away was already dead. That proved that Wu Taotao had really come back. Because the only person who died by the sea was Wu Taotao. What was she trying to do by dragging Tong Tong away? When the 4 university students thought of this, they felt a chill in their hearts. Xiao Qing endured her fear and clenched her fists. She looked at Hellion Vivian with a vicious gaze. What did I say? If we want to believe someone, we should believe Celestial Master Zhang. We shouldn't believe a liar. Hellion Vivian ignored her. Whether it was Celestial Master Zhang or the witch Leah, who was very popular on the internet, the two of them obviously didn't have any ability to catch ghosts. They just used the information they heard and the customer's reaction to guess the mental activities of people and make some speculations related to ghosts. Some of the older aunties believed in their tricks. Anyone who had read a little psychology book would know that they were just a bunch of fancy tricks. Moreover, Leah was only good at reading people's fortunes online. She rarely read people's fortunes on TV. Young people only thought that she was keeping a low profile. But they never thought about the real reason. She didn't read people's fortunes on TV because she was afraid that people would know that she couldn't read anything. In this day and age, game streamers had to find someone to carry them. Not to mention reading fortunes. This was more similar to Celestial Master Zhang. However, compared to the two, Leah's route was more in line with the tastes of young people. Her age, appearance and temperament were all very advantageous. Hellion Vivian knew what these two people were thinking. They had originally planned to leave, but after knowing that the monk was dead, they were obviously flustered, afraid that there would really be some ghost. Later, Deputy Liang said that the road was blocked. The two of them knew that they couldn't leave, so they pretended that they could predict the future and said that they had sensed the existence of a malicious spirit. On one hand, it was to protect their image as masters. On the other hand, it was to get the reward given by department head Song. Chapter 1086. Hellion Vivian had met many people like this before, so she didn't care and let them do whatever they wanted. She only glanced inside the bathroom. Other than the window being half open, she didn't find anything. Everything could not be more normal. Song Tong Tong was dragged away and Auntie Zhang was sadder than anyone else. After crying for a while, she seemed unwilling to give up. She went upstairs to take a look at Song Tong Tong's room. It was empty and there was no one inside. No one could eat dinner anymore. Adjutant Liang and another Special Forces soldier each held a flashlight. They didn't even put on their raincoats and rushed out of the villa. They were going to look for someone. Even if there really was a ghost. For the sake of the minister, they had to find the Mississippi. Even if what they brought back was just a corpse. The torrential rain was a huge hindrance to their search. In addition, there were no lights in the surroundings. It was really difficult to find anything in the darkness. Even Adjutant Liang started to believe that ghosts really existed. If he didn't, what kind of person could he be? How fast could he have disappeared into the boundless rain just like that? Unless that person wasn't human at all. At this moment, in the hall, Master Zhang began to sit down and gesture with his yellow talismans and peachwood sword. The university students sat around him and didn't dare to leave Master Zhang's side. The power supply facility had not been repaired. Everyone was relying on the few remaining candles to hold on. Celestial Master Zhang insisted that it was all the work of malicious ghosts. Hellion Vivian glanced at him and prepared to leave with Beligaju to look for clues. Should she say that she was too arbitrary? But she didn't think that her deduction was wrong. Hellion Vivian had always been like this. It didn't matter if you said that she was arrogant or arrogant. She would never change her mind easily. There must be something that she hadn't thought of. She had to find that as soon as possible. First, she had to restore the power. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to find any clues. This storm had affected the case too much. If she didn't find anything today, all the evidence would be washed away by the rain when the sun rose. Hellion Vivian first looked at the internal switch that controlled the power in the villa. No one had touched it. Then was there a problem with the outer gate? Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes and walked around the villa with a black umbrella. Only then did she know that the outer gate was placed in the backyard, very close to the bathroom on the first floor and the swimming pool outside the courtyard. There was still no problem with the gate, but the wires had been cut. After being damp, those wires could no longer be used. This was a very ruthless move by the murderer. Why did he cut off the electricity in the villa? Just for the convenience of committing murder? Or was there some other reason? Hellion Vivian looked at the flickering candlelight in the hall. Zhang Tianxi's chanting continued, and the thunder was still rumbling. This case seemed to be more complicated than she had imagined. However, one thing would not change. The murderer must be very hostile to her now. He wanted to use ghosts to cover up his crimes. However, she noticed the problem. That person must be looking for a chance to get rid of her. Hellion Wei Wei smiled faintly. That's the case. If that was the case, the college student named Xiao Qing seemed to hate her very much. Hellion Vivian looked at the cut wires in front of her and pondered. She didn't come to a conclusion immediately. Instead, she took out her phone and took a photo of the main switch. Baligaju stood behind her, holding a pure black umbrella in his hand, like a perfect demon deacon. After Hellion Wei Wei took the photo, she planned to bring His Highness in. Unexpectedly, as soon as she turned around, she saw Jing Zifeng standing outside the bathroom, muttering something to himself. What's wrong? Hellion Vivian walked to his side. The young man didn't even open his umbrella, and his hand was wrapped in a black bandage. It's a little strange. Tell me. Jing Zifeng was the only one who understood now. The young man didn't care that he was drenched in the rain, and there were still drops of water on his handsome face. I can't find the body. Huh? Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. The little paper shikigami stuck out of her sleeve and said, if someone died, little master can immediately locate it. I can only locate that monk. Only then did the young man remember that he didn't bring his shikigami with him. He stuffed these idiots into his arms in a not-so-gentle manner. Jing Zifeng didn't speak much, and he had just left the mountain recently, so he hadn't been able to communicate well with others. He was still wondering if the other party wouldn't understand him. Hellion Vivian asked in return, in other words, other than Master Wufan, the others aren't dead yet. The murderer didn't kill the person who was dragged away at all? Yes. Jing Zifeng nodded and looked at Bailey Jiaju, who was behind her, without hiding his hostility. Hellion Vivian naturally noticed the young man's gaze. She chuckled and said, don't worry, he won't kill anyone in front of me. What is he? Jing Zifeng was a little annoyed that he couldn't see through the other party's true identity. Hellion Vivian didn't say anything. She could see that the young man wasn't weak. She didn't want to make an enemy for a certain highness. Although the young man's personality was very compatible with hers, as an overbearing president, protecting her other half was the most important thing. I can't say. Hellion Vivian's tone was very indifferent. The 14-year-old Jing Zifeng frowned. But he thought that they could already communicate with each other. This was the first time he wanted to be friends with the humans at the foot of the mountain. Because I'm an overbearing president. Hellion Vivian coolly gave the young man a reason. Jing Zifeng really wanted to pull Hellion Vivian back and ask her what the relationship between the two was. He was being bullied because he had just left the mountain and didn't know the rules. The overbearing presidents at the foot of the mountain were all men. However, the young man didn't stubbornly follow behind Hellion Vivian and ask. Because he had a shortcut. Come out. After the young man walked into the villa, he began to shake his clothes. The paper shikigami revealed their small heads. The young man lowered his eyes. Who is that man? These shikigami were all given to him by his master. They had been by his master's side for thousands of years. It was impossible that they couldn't detect the other party's true identity. The strange thing was that the shikigami began to look at each other and then they began to shrink back in unison. One word, play dead. Jing Zifeng began to shake his clothes again, but this time the paper shikigami didn't come out. Even when he threatened to take them to the rain, they only shook a little and didn't do anything else. The young man frowned. What was going on? Chapter 1087. The little shikigami were speechless. Ooh, little master, it's not that we don't want to tell you, but the look in the great demon's eyes before we left was too scary. That look clearly said that if we dared to reveal his identity, he would turn us into ashes. It's not as simple as being drenched in water, it's turning us into ashes, do you understand? Those little guys seem to be very afraid of you. Hellion Vivian glanced sideways at His Highness. Bailey Jiaju reached out his hand and tucked her hair behind her ear. Then he said casually, "Do I? I'm so friendly to them." Hellion Vivian was speechless. "Don't use your friendly so casually in the future. It's too lethal." Hearing this, Baligaju chuckled. He put Hellion Vivian's hand to his lips and kissed it. "That depends on how Master performs tonight. I'll catch the murderer soon." Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows confidently. "You don't believe me?" Baligaju paused. What he said was obviously not the same as what she meant. "I believe you." The man smiled again, his eyes dark. Hellion Vivian chuckled. "Then why are you speaking in such a perfunctory manner?" Baligaju liked her like this. He pulled her over and said in a noble manner, "How would I dare to be perfunctory with my master?" Hellion Vivian knew that she couldn't win against His Highness, so she leaned over and stole a kiss. Then she looked like she had gained something. Baligaju originally wanted to let his little phoenix play here slowly, but now it seemed that it was better to solve the case as soon as possible. In this way he could do whatever he wanted to her. Hellion Vivian didn't know what His Highness was thinking. She was only thinking about what had happened today. Many things kept repeating in her mind. Some were too messy and some were too complicated. She needed to sort them out. Seeing them come in, Aunt Zhang wanted to add more bowls and chopsticks. However, Xiaoqing held Auntie Zhang's hand. "Auntie Zhang, some people will say anything to cheat money. It's a waste of food to let her eat." The pain of losing Song Tong Tong made Auntie Zhang's eyes dim. She shook her head, pushed Xiaoqing's hand away and walked into the kitchen. Xiaoqing completely disliked Hellion Vivian. Zhang Tianshi also glanced at that person arrogantly, then put away the peachwood sword. He pretended to be serious and said to Xiaoqing, "The water vapor on this malicious spirit is too strong. We can only wait until the rain stops before we can subdue her. But don't worry, she won't come out to cause trouble for the time being. I've already set up a barrier here. As long as we don't leave this place, no one will be in trouble." Hellion Vivian sneered in her heart. This celestial Master Zhang was not stupid. He knew that the murderer would not choose to make a move when everyone was around. However, the university students could not figure this out. Their trust had made them completely lose their ability to think, especially Xiaoqing. After hearing Celestial Master Zhang's words, she promised, "None of us will leave this place. If we go to the bathroom again, the two of us will go together." "That's right. That's how it should be." Celestial Master Zhang adjusted his tone and sat at the dining table. "We've already lost Miss Song. We can't just watch someone drag the malicious spirit away. I've just finished the ritual, so I need to replenish some energy. The malicious spirit's influence is too great. I'm afraid the power here can't be restored. You guys should eat something. That way you'll have the strength to last until dawn." "Okay." The people who had no appetite immediately picked up their cutlery when they heard Celestial Master Zhang's words. Hellion Vivian walked over, enlarged the photo on the phone and handed it to Yuan Wu. Yuan Wu immediately frowned. "What's this?" When Xiaoqing saw this, she put her chopsticks on the wooden table. "Yuan Wu, don't forget who dragged Tong Tong away because of..." Yuan Wu glanced at Xiaoqing and ignored her. He anxiously said to Hellion Vivian, "How did this happen?" "Obviously someone cut the wires." Hellion Vivian's voice was very calm. She pulled out a chair and sat on it lazily. Xiaoqing sneered. "You're making things up again." Celestial Master Zhang said that the power was cut off because of the influence of a malicious spirit. "Furthermore, we've checked the gate and didn't find any problems." "How could someone cut the wires?" "That's because we didn't check the gate outside the villa." Yuan Wu interrupted Xiaoqing. He took Hellion Vivian's phone and showed it to everyone. Xiaoqing's expression obviously changed. She looked as if she had been punched by someone. Hellion Vivian glanced at her. "There's no need for me to explain in detail. Everyone should be able to see the traces of the wires being cut. This is obviously done by someone. It's not because of the influence of a malicious spirit." "So what if that's the case?" Xiaoqing's face flushed red. "Tong Tong has already been taken away. That person is Wu Taotao. All of us saw it." Hellion Vivian picked up the teacup on the table and took a sip of water. She slowly smiled and said, "Xiaoqing, how much do you want the murderer to be a ghost? If it's a ghost, do you think you can escape? Do you think these little tricks can protect you?" "What do you mean by that?" Xiaoqing stood up, so angry that her hands were trembling. Hellion Vivian stood up, her eyes cold. I don't like people interfering with my investigation. It's obvious that someone deliberately pushed the blame onto the so-called ghost after committing the crime. As for the yellow talismans that Master Zhang pasted, even the words on the talisman paper were printed. What can they do? You. Master Zhang pointed at Hellion Vivian and said angrily, I'm warning you, don't talk nonsense and slander my professionalism. Professionalism? Hellion Vivian sneered and said to the youth who had just entered, Jing Zifeng, draw a yellow talisman and show Master Zhang what professionalism is. The youth did not speak. He nodded his head and took out a piece of paper. Then he bit his finger and a talisman seal appeared. Following that, the most ordinary piece of paper glowed and flew towards the corner of the entrance. It stuck to the wind chime that was hanging on the wall. Professionalism. The youth retracted his hand and said 2 words. He sat beside Hellion Vivian. The rest of the people were obviously dumbfounded. Compared to the youth, Master Zhang's so-called method did look like a trick. Master Zhang's expression also changed. He knew that he had kicked an iron plate this time. He had seen so many masters, but none of them dared to take out a piece of paper and turn it into a talisman. Hellion Vivian looked at him. Master Zhang, do you want to use your professional knowledge to tell me why Zifeng pasted the yellow talisman on the wind chime? Chapter 1088. Because. Master Zhang clenched his fists tightly. He opened his mouth twice in a row but didn't make a sound because he really couldn't say it. He knew some feng shui but he bought some books and casually taught himself. He didn't expect that after so many years of lying and deceiving, he would make many rich businessmen believe him. Gradually he became famous in the industry but in reality he only knew a little about this industry. How could he know so much? At this point the university students could see that Master Zhang was in a panic. Little Qing refused to give up and grabbed his arm. Master Zhang, quickly tell this woman that you know. But she waited for a long time but Master Zhang didn't say anything. The truth couldn't be more obvious. Xiao Qing let go of her hand and looked like she had lost her soul. It was useless for Master Zhang to pester her endlessly. He didn't have any real ability at all. Hellion Vivian walked over and picked up the wind chime. She casually threw it into the trash can. Because the wind chime gathers een and is a ghost-attracting item. Hanging it here will only make the aura of the villa extremely turbid. I didn't do anything. Perhaps everyone doesn't believe in my ability, but you should have seen Jing Zifeng's ability. Since he said that it was a human who killed someone, then it must be a human who killed someone. Moreover, he has the ability to locate a corpse. There is only one corpse here now and that is Master Wufan. In other words, the person who was dragged away isn't dead. You're saying that Miss is still safe? Aunt Zhang's eyes immediately lit up. Hellion Vivian nodded. It seems so for now. Then who was it? Who cut the wires from the outside and deliberately wore Wu Taotao's clothes to hide Tong Tong? Yunwu's eyes were red as he slammed his fist on the table. Hellion Vivian's eyes lit up. No, he didn't just want to hide Miss Song, but he didn't have time to kill anyone because there were still 2 special forces soldiers here that he had to worry about. Miss Hellion, are you saying that there's another person hiding outside the villa that we don't know about? Old Master Song seemed to have heard the discussion in the hall and walked over with his walking stick. What he didn't expect was that Hellion Vivian actually shook her head. No, I always thought that the murderer was among us. Are you crazy? Xiao Qing was really about to break down from Hellion Vivian's words. We're all in the villa and have never gone out. How are we supposed to turn on the power switch and then go through the hall to the 3rd floor after turning on the power switch? We'll be discovered before we can drag Tong Tong down from the 3rd floor, okay? Can you not be so ignorant? It was getting more and more ridiculous. What did Deputy Liang just say? He said that the murderer disappeared in the blink of an eye. Who could be faster than a special forces soldier? Unless she was not human at all. Everyone knew this. Do you think we haven't even graduated from primary school? Am I supposed to listen to your lies? I believe her. Jing interrupted Xiao Qing. Because of the plate of vegetarian meatballs, he was completely on Hellion Vivian's side. The murderer is among us. When Xiao Qing was facing Jing Xiaofeng, she wasn't so angry. After all, Jing Xiaofeng's move just now was too powerful. He was simply a godlike figure. She wouldn't go against anyone for no reason. Seriously, I really don't know what to say. Xiao Qing sat back on the chair angrily. In the face of such a commotion, Hellion Vivian only said to Old Master Song calmly, "I need to go upstairs and take a look." Old Master Song actually believed Xiao Qing's analysis. Compared to what Hellion Vivian said, he felt that the possibility of there being someone outside the villa was higher. However, he didn't stop Hellion Vivian. Instead, he said to Auntie Zhang, "Follow Miss Hellion upstairs." Hellion Vivian had seen Song Tongtong's photo before. She was indeed very good-looking. Although she didn't have a sharp face, she had delicate features and was very elegant. She looked very much like a gentle celebrity from before. Was there still a need for plastic surgery? Chapter 1089. There were also a few black invitations sent to them in the magazine. Just as Old Master Song had said at the beginning, the person who had written to them was indeed Song Tong Tong. Hellion Vivian raised her head again and glanced at the luxurious cosmetics on the dressing table. Her eyes darkened. Auntie Zhang noticed her gaze and placed a bottle of fairy water on the table. Miss likes her cosmetics the most. She can't bear to see them dirty. She'll throw a tantrum at anyone who touches them. Her tone was as if she was talking about her own child. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. "So when you handed me the meatballs, you were afraid that I'd find them dirty because she said so. She was also the one who injured your wrist, right?" Auntie Zhang's outstretched hand suddenly paused and even her back was a little stiff. That accident was too big a blow to Mississippi Master only comes back during the new year. She must be very scared, but she doesn't know who to tell, so she threw a tantrum at me. It's just a small matter, nothing much. Seeing the look in Auntie Zhang's eyes, Hellion Vivian didn't continue this topic. Instead, she held her phone and turned on the light as she looked at the photo on the bedside table. The photo was a group photo of several university students together. However, the strange thing was that a hole had been burned in the photo with fire. And the person who had been burned was Song Tong Tong herself. Hellion Wei's brows furrowed tightly. What's going on with this photo? Who would put a photo of themselves on the bedside table? Auntie Zhang shook her head. The photo has been like this for a while. I also asked Mississippi. She threw a big tantrum and seemed very scared. She told me to ignore it and get out. Actually, at that time I was afraid that something would happen to Miss, so I told Master everything that happened at home. Only then did Master believe that something unclean was following Mississippi. Was that really the case? Hellion Vivian stood up again and shone her phone on the wall. Her eyes sparkled. She thought that she should know what was going on. However, there was still one thing she didn't understand. Why did the person disappear when Deputy Liang rushed out? If this wasn't explained clearly, there was no way the murderer would give in obediently. When the time came, the other party would definitely use this to refute her. He had to find a way to find decisive evidence to make the other party speechless. Wait a minute. If she was the murderer, what would she be most upset about? Hellion Vivian sat down and closed her eyes. She began to draw a picture in her mind. It was raining today and it would definitely be inconvenient to drag someone along. Furthermore, this person must not be discovered by others. Therefore, he had to hide the person in his hands first. Hide it. Hellion Vivian's eyes suddenly widened. Her gaze was as sharp as a knife. Auntie Zhang, let's go downstairs. Hellion Vivian put away her phone and stood up. Aunt Zhang was puzzled. Aren't we going to continue looking? I'm not looking anymore. Hellion Vivian put her left hand into her trouser pocket casually and said with a mischievous smile, because the murderer is downstairs. What? Auntie Zhang was shocked by her words, and her hand that was holding the candle trembled. Xiao Qing saw Hellion Vivian walking down the stairs and laughed mockingly. Anyone could see her hostility towards Hellion Vivian. Hellion Vivian didn't have the time to pay attention to her. The first thing she said when she went downstairs was, "The person who was dragged away wasn't Song Tong Tong but one of us." Oh my god, what nonsense is she spouting again? Xiao Qing couldn't stand Hellion Vivian's wild imagination. Look carefully, we're all here. Even the special forces that Uncle Song sent out are back. You actually said that one of us was dragged away? Master Hellion, are you sure your brain is normal? Or is there something wrong with your eyes? Master Zhang also chimed in, my magic isn't good, but I've never done anything to scam people. Some of the younger generation, on the other hand, have already started making up stories in order to get the final commission. This isn't a story because the murderer used the same method to kill someone half a year ago. Hellion Vivian looked at Auntie Zhang. I'm sorry, Auntie Zhang, but I have to tell you a piece of bad news. Miss Song Tong Tong is no longer in this world. Auntie Zhang's eyes widened as she looked at Hellion Vivian. Didn't you just say, are you trying to slap your own face? Xiao Qing sneered and said, you just told Uncle Song that Tong Tong was fine and that you couldn't find the location of the body. Now you're saying that Tong Tong was killed? Master Hellion, I don't think you should be a yin yang master. You should go on Weibo and tell jokes. Let's see how the netizens will scold you. You've inverted right and wrong in front of Uncle Song time and time again. Where do you think this is? This is the military. Hellion Vivian looked up and glanced at her. It was just a glance, but it made Xiao Qing's entire body freeze. She had never seen such a cold gaze before. It was as if she could kill her at any time, and it seeped into her bones. When Hellion Vivian saw that she had quietened down, she slowly said, I only said that the person who was dragged away was fine, and Song Tong Tong wasn't killed here. It was half a year ago when you guys went to the beach. What do you mean by that? It wasn't just the juniors. Even old Master Song stood up after hearing this. His eyes shook violently, and his fingers pressed heavily on his dragon-headed walking stick. Ridiculous. It's simply ridiculous. Little Qing is right. I've really indulged you too much. Master Hellion, do you know what you're saying? Before today my granddaughter had always been fine. Could it be that the granddaughter who has been by my side for the past 6 months is a dead person? When Adjutant Liang saw how agitated he was afraid that the old minister's heart would relapse again. He supported old Master Song and tried to calm him down. I know that these things are difficult for your family to accept. Hellion Vivian looked at Director Song. But the one who has been by your side for the past 6 months is not your biological granddaughter Song Tong Tong, but Wu Tao Tao, who everyone thought was dead. Tao Tao? The lively girl widened her eyes. How is that possible? Hellion Vivian's voice was very calm. Nothing is impossible. I just saw the photo of you together. Wu Tao Tao and Miss Song are about the same height and body shape. As long as you change your face, you can completely replace her. You mean she? The girl seemed to have guessed something, and her face completely lost color. That's right. Hellion Vivian hit the nail on the head. She has plastic surgery to look like Miss Song and deceived all of you. Chapter 1090. Hearing this, Little Qing's body suddenly froze. Hellion Vivian continued. When Wu Tao Tao invited all of you back then, she had already arranged everything, including the soul pawning game. Think about it carefully. You didn't see her for nearly 3 months before this. When you saw her again, it was at the seaside when night had just fallen. None of you saw how she looked after her plastic surgery because she was wearing a mask the entire time. Of course, plastic surgery was too serious, so she did need to wear a mask to prevent infection. However, all of you ate barbecue that day. There are many things to abstain from after plastic surgery. If she was really afraid of infection, she should be more worried about the barbecue, not the sea breeze. Furthermore, all of you drank and fell asleep for no reason. You have no idea what happened in between. When you woke up, all you saw was a corpse floating on the sea. Yeah, but Tong Tong was standing beside us at that time, the girl said. Hellion Vivian's voice was very calm. The one standing beside you wasn't Miss Song at all, but Wu Tao Tao, who had secretly replaced her. In fact, she had already undergone plastic surgery a long time ago and had already passed her safe period, so she wasn't afraid of eating barbecue. She wore a mask the entire time, not to prevent infection, but because she didn't want all of you to see how she looked after plastic surgery, because only then could she possibly complete her grand plan. Then she suggested playing the soul pawning game. This game could allow her to avoid a lot of trouble after she killed someone. When something happened, everyone would think that it was a ghost causing trouble. After all, the victim's death was too tragic. At that time, all of you were still in university, so perhaps there were some things that you hadn't come into contact with, so you didn't think carefully about why such a death would appear. If it was really a ghost, all she had to do was drag the victim into the sea and drown her. Why go through the trouble of scratching her face until it was unrecognizable? In criminal psychology, this action has 2 meanings. The first is jealousy and the second is very deep. It's called a cover-up. The murderer wanted to cover up something. What she wanted to cover up was that she couldn't let anyone know that the person who died wasn't Wu Tao Tao, but Song Tong Tong. Such a shocking deduction was made. The entire hall fell into a silence that had never been there before. Everyone's expression was different. All of them seemed to have been struck by something, and it took them a long time to come back to their senses. Only Aunt Zhang burst into tears all of a sudden. She was the only one who knew that Hellion Weiwei was telling the truth. In the past half a year, the change in Miss was so obvious. She still remembered that during the summer holidays when she came back from school, she would always pester her to eat fried meatballs. But ever since that year she found her dirty. Whenever she was unhappy she would chisel her with something. Sometimes she would even kick her fiercely and tell her to scram. Auntie Zhang couldn't bear to leave. He had watched Miss grow up. Sometimes she would wonder why a child would become like this out of nowhere. Now she understood. That was not her Miss at all. When old Master Song saw Aunt Zhang's reaction, he instantly understood something. He sat back down heavily in his seat, and his eyes, which had never admitted defeat before, were stained with defeat. Why? My granddaughter has never done anything wrong to anyone. Why did she target Tong Tong? Because Miss Song has everything that she wants but can't reach. Her family background, appearance, and position in the hearts of her male classmates. Hellion Vivian glanced at Yuan Wu. In addition, she knows Miss Song very well. Miss Song lost her parents when she was young and has only one friend. Department Head Song lives in the army all year round, and there is only one Auntie Zhang at home who serves her. With all these circumstances combined, she became Wu Taotao's target because after she became Miss Song, she didn't have to worry about being discovered at all. Perhaps Auntie Zhang would notice something, but Auntie Zhang definitely wouldn't expect that she is no longer herself. An old butler is no threat in Wu Taotao's eyes at all. As long as she cuts off her previous circle of friends, she can live in this world without any scruples as Song Tong Tong. She can buy the luxury goods she wants and live in the mansion she wants. No, this is too cruel. The girl's fingers trembled as she covered her lips. Just for these things Tao Tao will kill her good friend? Hellion Vivian looked at the girl and sighed. Do you still remember that you said that she insulted and beat up her mother for an iPhone? Not long after that, her mother passed away in a car accident. Not only did Wu Taotao not feel sad at all, she even happily went abroad to squander money. This proves how selfish Wu Taotao is. In her eyes, even her biological mother is not a big deal, let alone the good friend you speak of. The girl was completely speechless. She didn't know what to say because all of Hellion Vivian's statements were so reasonable. It was hard for her not to believe it. In other words, I raced the enemy who killed my own granddaughter at home for half a year. Old Master Song gripped his dragon-headed walking stick tightly. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with hatred. Master Zhang was dumbfounded. He had never thought that such a thing could happen in this world. Plastic surgery? Face change? This girl named Wu Taotao was so ruthless that it made one's hair stand on end. Wait, something didn't seem right. Master Zhang widened his eyes and stuttered to Hellion Vivian. Just now you said that the person who was dragged away wasn't Song Tong Tong but one of us. What do you mean? Literally. Hellion Vivian looked around and slowly said, Wu Taotao, who is alive as Miss Song, has changed her face again. Now she is among us. A loud bang was heard. The university student named Xiao Qing stood up immediately. When the others heard this, their hearts couldn't help but tremble. Whenever they thought of Wu Taotao who had killed someone sitting on both sides of them, they felt a chill run down their backs. Since she changed her face, it must be a girl. Because if it was a boy, the difference in height would expose her. Hellion Vivian chuckled and said, all along we thought that Miss Song, who is Wu Taotao, had been staying in the room and never came out. After all, she was a victim and was already afraid of ghosts to a certain extent. It was impossible for her to walk around casually. In fact, Auntie Zhang saw her go out. Chapter 1091. She left the room to complete her first murder plan. Hellion Vivian tapped her fingers on the table. Ever since Master Wufan entered this villa, he has been feeling uneasy. When Department Head Song mentioned the accident back then, he didn't even listen to what Celestial Master Zhang was discussing. I'm guessing that Master Wufan must have sensed something and had been in contact with Wu Taotao, who had transformed into Miss Song. After all, he had come to the Song family before, so it's not strange for the two of them to have a deal. Hellion Vivian looked up at Celestial Master Zhang. Everyone knows that the cell signal in the villa is very poor. Unless one is connected to the internet, there's no way to communicate. However, Master Wufan said that he was waiting for a call. From this, it can be seen that the call he was waiting for wasn't made to his cell phone, but to the landline in the room. Every room we live in has a landline, and every room can call and talk to each other. As long as she knows which room Master Wufan lives in, she can ask Master Wufan out and kill him. There were no wounds on Master Wufan's body. It was obvious that he suffocated to death, but from the beginning to the end, we didn't hear any sounds of struggle. It was indeed raining heavily, but Master Wufan was an adult man and had a certain level of skill. It would take some time to drown him. That way it would be impossible for Adjutant Liang, who was stationed outside the villa, not to hear anything. However, Master Wufan died exceptionally quietly. There was no sound at all, which means that he died without being on guard. In other words, it was an acquaintance who committed the crime. She killed Master Wufan to silence him. The second time she acted so anxiously was because after she killed Master Wufan, she exposed the suspicion that the murderer was a human and not a ghost. I think that when we were discussing in the hall, Wu Taotao should have been listening in a corner. He hated me very much. She hated me to the extreme because it was very likely that her plan would be ruined by me. That's why after she killed Master Wufan, she immediately wanted to kill a second person. Because the second person was her real target. She has been preparing for this murder since more than 2 months ago. First, she mentioned the incident at the beach, and then she used that as an excuse to lock herself in the house. Actually, she didn't come out not because she was afraid of ghosts, but because she had undergone plastic surgery to look like someone else, and it was inconvenient for her to be seen. Then she started to act according to plan. She deliberately put on the clothes she wore when she was Wu Taotao and made the victim wear Miss Song's clothes. Firstly, it was to make everyone believe that it was a ghost who came to claim lives and not a murderer. Secondly, it was so that she could logically have a new identity and make the real person disappear along with the identity of Song Tong Tong. At that time, everyone will fall into deeper horror because Wu Taotao's ghost took Song Tong Tong away. No one will believe that she was killed. This way she can continue to live with her new identity and never be discovered. Too scary. This kind of person is too scary. The girl hugged her arms and even her voice was trembling. The person sitting next to him was the murderer. This kind of feeling made one's hair stand on end. However, Yunwu's first reaction was not fear but anger. He turned his head and looked at Xiaoqing, who was sitting at the back. "It's you, right? Only you have been targeting Master Helion and calling her a liar. You brought all of us into the lies you made up. You pointed at the figure outside the window and said that she was back to claim lives. Isn't that you? What kind of joke is this?" Xiaoqing's face turned pale. "I just don't believe this celestial Master Helion." At that time, everyone clearly saw the shadow outside the window. Don't you think that there was a ghost? Everything that this celestial Master Helion is saying is too unbelievable. Changing faces? And twice in a row? Is this really possible? As she spoke, Xiaoqing turned to look at Old Master Song. "Uncle Song, do you think this is possible?" Old Master Song's eyes carried a strong military aura as he rebutted her words. "It's possible." Xiaoqing was stunned and said anxiously, "Uncle Song, don't be fooled by this person. If it's really a murder, then how do you explain the scene that Deputy Liang saw? What kind of person can be so fast and disappear in the blink of an eye? Unless it's a ghost. This problem is very easy to solve." Helion Vivian leaned back and sat lazily on the wooden chair with her legs slightly crossed. Xiaoqing paused. Her face was full of astonishment. "What did you say? Very easy to solve? But I can't be bothered to talk to you anymore." Helion Vivian smiled, her eyes cold. "So from now on you'd better shut up." Xiaoqing had always lived recklessly since she was young. She had never been treated like this before. Her entire face flushed red as she glared at Helion Vivian desperately. Helion Vivian did not look at her again. Instead, her gaze landed on someone. "If this student Qing was half as smart as you, I wouldn't have to work so hard. Don't you think so, student Wu Taotao?" In an instant, everyone followed her gaze. That was the witch Leah. Leah met her gaze in confusion, looking like she did not know what was going on. "You don't have to look around." Helion Vivian reached out to support herself on the table and slowly stood up, looking down at her. Leah pointed at herself, her gentle voice trembling slightly. "You suspect me? Impossible. No one felt that there was anything wrong with Leah. I say you must be careful when identifying the murderer. Master Zhang looked at Hellion Vivian and said, if you identify the wrong person, the real Wu Taotao will be safe. This is the most dangerous. Hellion Vivian opened her eyes and glanced at him. She smiled. Master Zhang, from the beginning, you and that student Qing have been interfering with me. You are the best helpers for the murderer. I know you have some other thoughts about Miss Leah, but if you say any more nonsense, get lost immediately. Miss Hellion. Leah opened her mouth. Master Zhang is also afraid that the real murderer will escape punishment, so I reminded you. Why do you have to speak so harshly? If you suspect that I'm the murderer, show me the evidence. It's ridiculous to change faces. We can't just follow your thoughts like this. Whoever you say is the murderer is the murderer. This is simply playing with our lives. Hellion Vivian curled her thin lips and lowered her face a little, but her eyes were cold. Wu Taotao, do you think that if you do it secretly, others won't see through your tricks? Chapter 1092. My name is not Wu Taotao. Leah sighed helplessly. Miss Hellion, is it really okay for you to make such an arbitrary judgment and not listen to other people's advice? Aren't you afraid of causing disgust? Hellion Vivian smiled and retracted her arm. Leah thought that she finally knew how to consider other people's feelings. Unexpectedly, Hellion Vivian said, the people in this villa have nothing to do with me. It doesn't matter if they dislike me or even hate me. I'm here to earn money, not to do charity. You want me to consider everyone's feelings? Excuse me. Do I look like a little Virgin Mary? Leah felt like she was choking at that moment. Hellion Vivian didn't change the faint smile on her face. Okay, let's talk about why I suspect you. There are a lot of photos of Miss Leah in your room, and you even kept her information in detail. It's obvious that she has been your target for a long time, including this time when you called all of us young masters here. In fact, your real target is only Miss Leah. You want to become her, so you keep studying her so that you can imitate her in the future. Soon you found out many of her little secrets, including that she doesn't know any witchcraft and is just a live-streamed lie on the computer. Also, she is very afraid of the dark, so you have been hiding outside. When you heard that she was going to the toilet, you found an opportunity to cut the wires. At this time, Leah is very easy to deal with, anyone can knock her out. Miss Hellion. Leah took a deep breath. I really don't know what to say. I have so many fans on the internet and countless people buy photos. You think that I'm the murderer just based on your imagination and these photos? Do you think this kind of excuse can be accepted? If you can't find any evidence to slander me like this, I can only wait until dawn and let my private lawyer have a good talk with you. Hellion Vivian turned the teacup in her hand. Let's talk now. Time is money. My fee is very expensive. Speaking of this, she casually glanced at little Qing. Student Qing, haven't you always been doubting my speculation? Now he could listen carefully to why a person could disappear in the blink of an eye. It was a very simple trick. When Deputy Liang chased after the murderer, he happened to see the murderer turn a corner. He thought that the murderer went in that direction. In fact, the murderer could have used the gap in the wall to jump into the bathroom at the corner. This way, when Deputy Liang ran over, there would definitely be no one there. Xiao Qing, who was named, had a very bad expression. She had never thought that there would be such a method. She only felt that she was being slapped in the face. Hellion Vivian took a sip of tea. At that time you were still doubting me. Celestial Master Zhang was also denouncing you in order to get the final commission. Your reactions were all within the murderer's expectations. Because if the ghost appeared, my argument would immediately be attacked. Wu Taotao knew you very well. After all, you were classmates. She knew very well what kind of personality you had. You were born rich, so you definitely wouldn't be satisfied with my accusation. Using this point, Wu Taotao bought a lot of time, such as cross-dressing. At this point, Hellion Vivian paused and looked at Leah. When we went to knock on the door, you should have been changing your clothes. You changed the clothes we saw before into Miss Leah's clothes. That's why we heard the sound of clothes rustling in the bathroom. In the end, these are just your speculations, Leah said without changing her expression. There's no real evidence. Hellion Vivian frowned. Evidence? It's indeed a headache to find. That's why you're so fearless, isn't it? Leah curled her lower lip slightly and didn't say anything. Hellion Vivian smiled. However, I still found it. What? Leah was shocked. Hellion Vivian looked to the side. Deputy Liang, can I trouble you to check the vent of the bathroom? There might be a person hiding there. Hearing this, Leah's expression completely changed. Her hand moved, but her eyes slowly darkened. Soon, Deputy Liang's excited voice came from the other side. It's a person. There's really a person here. This is Miss Leah. Bang. A gunshot sounded. Jing Xiaofeng quickly blocked in front of Hellion Vivian. The knife in his hand cut the bullet in half. Leah, no, it should be. Wu Taotao held a pistol and pointed the muzzle at Hellion Vivian. She smiled. What an eyesore. Such a perfect plan was ruined by you. Perfect? Hellion Vivian laughed softly. Do you deserve this word? In order to get a phone, you beat and scolded your mother. From the beginning to the end, you were filthy. I really can't find any salvation. Wu Taotao sneered. Having a mother like that will only embarrass me. I can be poor without money or power. The Song family is not bad. If that monk hadn't noticed something, I wouldn't have had to change my identity. However, I also like this identity very much. A genius which can easily be loved by thousands of people. I could have gotten it quietly, but I had to come and mess things up. I'm really courting death. Why? Tata, why did you do this? Little Qing clenched her hands and roared. Wu Taotao glanced at her. What do you mean why? Do you think I don't know? How did you mock me behind my back? You said that the phones I use are all domestic, that my clothes are worthless, and that my mother looks like a village girl. Speaking of which, if you hadn't kept saying that, I wouldn't have thought of changing identities with Song Tong Tong. After all, compared to you, I hate her more. Why is it that she was born with nothing but I have nothing? She roared the last sentence. Her face after plastic surgery was distorted to a certain extent. Under the flickering candlelight, she looked even scarier than a real evil ghost. All right, it's time for the game to end. Wu Taotao laughed again, her voice a little gloomy. Originally, I didn't intend to kill too many people, but if I don't silence all of you now, I'll be very distressed. As she spoke, she met Hellion Vivian's gaze. Don't worry. After all of you are dead, I'll call the police and tell them that this place is haunted. I'll ask them for help. Just like back then at the seaside, no one will suspect the victims. At that time, I can still get away with it. Because no matter how many people come, they will all become use food. When the man heard this, he licked his lower lip. His blood-red eyes turned and finally fixed on Hellion Vivian. What a fragrant smell. If this soul is crushed, the taste should be very good. Then what are you waiting for? Wu Tong Tong said coldly, kill her. She thought that when she said this, she would see Hellion Vivian show the same expression as Shao Qing. After all, this woman was so smart that it made her a little unhappy. However, what Wu Tong Tong didn't expect was, the other party actually smiled. Her voice was low and pleasing to the ears. Him, kill me. Wu Tong Tong was also smiling, and her tone was full of pride. I know you know magic, but who do you think you is? Even if you have some ability in Yin Yang Dao, you can still cut your soul. Oh. Hellion Vivian raised her right hand, and the direction of the wind suddenly changed. Then let's try and see who can cut who? It smells so good, it really smells so good. When you smelled Hellion Vivian's aura, his eyes had already fallen into madness. Now he directly stretched out his black fingernails and grabbed in the direction of Hellion Vivian. However, before he could get close to Hellion Vivian, a figure faster than him blocked in front of him. You looked at his arm that was grabbed and didn't have time to speak. There was a bang. His entire body was kicked to the ground heavily. A tearing pain came from his hand. You immediately raised his head to look at the man who attacked him. Baligaju stood there, his tall and slender figure wrapped in a military uniform. Black feathers fell slowly, making him look like a warlord noble. It was very unreal, but his entire body was integrated into one with the darkness. I don't like people looking at my soul with that kind of gaze. You are. Yu's eyes slowly widened, fear filled all his cells, and the name on the tip of his tongue was about to come out. However, Baligaju would never give anyone who wanted to touch his pet any chance. There was a crisp crack. His hand was forcibly broken by him. Wu Taotao's expression changed. What was going on? It shouldn't be like this. How could there be someone in the world who could hurt you? Wu Taotao seemed to have thought of something. She took out a piece of paper and kept drawing with the blood on her hand. However, it still didn't work. How could this be? Wu Taotao pulled the paper crazily. Then she seemed to have thought of something and looked at Hellion Vivian. Who are you? Hellion Vivian chuckled. The Yin Yang masters you invited. Wu Taotao's eyes were red. Can't be that simple. No one can do this to you. Why not? Hellion Vivian asked lazily. Wu Taotao, you're not the only one who can sign a contract. Chapter 1094. Wu Taotao was shocked. You also sold your soul to the Grim Reaper? Grim Reaper? Hellion Vivian tapped her fingers on the table and said evilly, Our Highness doesn't like to be called that. Wu Taotao was about to break down. She looked at Hellion Vivian's smiling face. It felt as if the other party had already known what she was capable of and was waiting for her to walk right into the trap. She never thought that the person she casually chose on the internet, the person she thought was the best to deal with, would be like this. Who is it? Who are you? Wu Taotao roared, trembling with anger. She hated people who were smarter and better looking than her the most. She turned to Qi and said, Qi, don't fight with him. Come and kill this woman first. In the past, every time she called for Qi, he would rush over quickly. It was the same this time. After all, she couldn't die no matter what. Indeed, the Grim Reaper stood up and moved his fingers to restore his arm to its original position. Then he flew toward Wu Tao. Yes, just like that, kill her. Just as Wu Taotao's eyes lit up with surprise, Qi pierced her chest with his fingernails. Qi. Wu Taotao looked at the person in front of her in shock. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Why? Qi was like an evil spirit. He cracked his lips and smiled. Because I don't need you anymore. Dirty humans are really boring. At first, I thought you were quite smart and your killing methods were very beautiful. I didn't expect you to be so stupid this time and attract someone you shouldn't have. As he said that, he exerted force and Wu Taotao's heart was completely shattered. While enjoying the pleasure of cutting her soul, Qi planned to escape. He didn't want to fight head-on with the other party. Celestial Master Zhang became his best target. After passing through this body, he could hide the aura on his body again. Master Zhang saw Qi rushing toward him like an evil spirit. His eyes were filled with tears as he shouted, Help! Qi was worried that Beligaju would notice his intentions, but he didn't expect that the man didn't even move. The legendary Demon King was nothing more than this. However, when he passed through Celestial Master Zhang's body, he realized that he was completely wrong. The other party had already seen through his ploy. Otherwise, the man wouldn't have been waiting for him in advance. I heard that after being possessed by the Grim Reaper, even if you don't die, you will go crazy. Beligaju reached out and grabbed his collar. His action was not rude, but had an indescribable elegance. His handsome side profile was still so perfect that it made people's hearts flutter. He lowered his voice and said in Yu's ear, Thank you very much. She doesn't like to see me kill people, but I hate those who deserve to die. Of course, besides this Master Zhang, what I dislike the most is that someone dares to peep at my prey. It was him. He didn't move just now because he wanted to use him to punish Celestial Master Zhang. You finally understood. But it was too late. Only now did he realize that Beligaju had not displayed his full strength at all. The moment the black feather fell, an extremely painful burning sensation spread from his fingers to his entire body. It felt like he couldn't shake it off no matter how hard he tried. When you lowered his head again, his lower body had already turned into a pool of black water, followed by his upper body. Wherever the black feather floated, it was as if it had been burned by fire. In the end, it was completely melted. In contrast, Beligaju smiled gently. He let go of his hand and wiped his fingers with a tissue before walking towards Hellion Vivian. He looked quite distressed. I seem to have been a little merciful. I wanted to let him kneel and cry for a while. Hellion Vivian was speechless. Don't mind these details. What else could she say? Shouldn't the one crying be the Grim Reaper who had turned into black water? Beligaju smiled and held Hellion Vivian's hand. He put it to his lips and kissed it. My master, you are so considerate. Of course. Hellion Vivian was very happy to be praised, so she didn't ask why he didn't get rid of the Grim Reaper at the beginning and even let him pass through a person. Beligaju looked at her smug little face and curled his lips without batting an eyelid. Look how cute his pet was. Xiao Qing, who was at the side, widened her eyes. The truth was right in front of her. Everything was as Hellion Vivian had said. From the beginning to the end, the murderer was among them. But why? In the end, it's that evil spirit who controlled Tao Tao. At this point, Xiaoqing was still stubborn. If it wasn't for this evil spirit, Tao Tao wouldn't have killed people. Hellion Vivian took off the prayer beads in her hand and placed them in the pool of black water. She sneered. From the beginning to the end, it was Wu Tao Tao who killed whoever she wanted. It was just that after she signed a contract with the Grim Reaper, the Grim Reaper would help her destroy those souls. A serial killer isn't formed overnight. It can be seen from the way she treated her mother. If Wu Tao Tao gave her any incentive, she would go astray. What does this have to do with the Grim Reaper? A vicious heart is a vicious heart. That's right. A devilish figure walked in from outside the villa. He had long hair, a handsome face, and a huge scythe on his shoulder. Who else could it be but Casso? I hate these humans the most. After they kill people, they push the blame to us, the Grim Reaper. They collect souls every day and don't even give us a raise. Do they really think we're willing? As he spoke, Casso smiled at Xiaoqing. A person like you also has the potential to be a pervert. Come, let me see what's inside you. Jealousy, vanity, and wanting to curry favor with the Song family. That's why you've always been friends with Song Tong Tong. In fact, you don't really like her because you know that the Song family only has one granddaughter. As long as you mention Song Tong Tong from time to time and make old Master Song sad, you'll always gain some benefits. After all, old people miss their family. Hehe, this kind of method of poking at people's wounds is really shameless. You. Xiaoqing glanced at Department Head Song and said to Casso, don't talk nonsense. Nonsense? Casso raised his eyebrows. I think you're angry because I guessed right. Ha, what a dirty little human. Xiaoqing's face flushed red. Looking at the gazes that were directed at her from all around, she felt a burning sensation on her face. All her friends were looking at her. Those abnormal gazes. It simply made her feel ashamed. But none of this was important. The most important thing was Department Head Song. Uncle Song, you have to believe me. I mentioned Tong Tong because I miss her. Chapter 1095. Little Qing tried her best to defend herself. Old Master Song held his dragon-headed walking stick in his hand and didn't say anything. Casso laughed softly. Your first reaction is to look for Old Master Song. It seems that money is still more important than friends in your heart. As he spoke, he looked at Hellion Vivian. Do you want me to help you cut off this girl's soul? I have a feeling that she won't be a good person in the future. No need. Let this kind of person fend for herself. Hellion Vivian raised her chin in the direction of the dead Wu Tao Tao. The one you want is over there. Thanks. Casso walked to Wu Tao Tao's side and poked her face with his finger. It's all black. I really don't understand why someone likes to eat this kind of food. Phoenix, it's fortunate that I met you. Otherwise, if this woman continued to turn black, she would definitely become a perverted murderer. Hellion Vivian was very indifferent. It's just business. When the time comes, Department Head Song will pay me. Master Hellion, don't worry. Not only did you save everyone's lives today, but you also exposed the truth of what happened back then and what the people around me were like in front of me. I will definitely give you a lot of money. Old Master Song stood up and swept his sharp gaze over Little Qing, who was sitting on the ground. He didn't say anything else, but Little Qing knew that she could forget about basking in the glory of the Song family in the future. Casso was not interested in the matter of these humans slapping their faces. After cutting off the soul that he wanted to collect, he went over to Hellion Vivian. Beligaju elegantly blocked in front of him and smiled evilly. I heard that the Grim Reaper hates being cut by his own scythe the most. Do you want to test it? Casso immediately took a big step back. Holy shit. Do you have to be so possessive? Forget it, he originally wanted to tell Phoenix a piece of good news. Since the great demon was so protective of his food, he decided to tell this news to the two little demons first. The rain outside finally stopped. Just as Jing Zifeng dispersed the resentment on Wu Fan's body, military Hummers came around the mountain. The roads were cleared and the power lines were connected. The entire villa was brightly lit. Hellion Vivian stood in front of Old Master Song. The other party seemed to have aged more than 10 years in an instant. I should have spent more time with Tong Tong. It's because I didn't care enough about her that things ended up like this. The people who got close to her and hurt her were all because of her surname. Hellion Vivian closed the box full of commissions. When the Grim Reaper dies, the souls he harvests will be reincarnated as humans. Hearing this, Elder Song's eyes lit up. He wanted to say something to express his gratitude, but when he turned around there was no one behind him. Jing Zifeng stood outside the villa, holding a steamed bun in his hand. He gnawed on it bit by bit as he stared at Beligaju, who walked out. Then he looked at Hellion Vivian and said, "I'm going back to the mountain." Hellion Vivian looked at the sword-like youth and smiled. "I thought you were going to fight with His Highness." Jing Zifeng was a man of few words. "With you around he won't kill anyone, so there's no need to fight." Hellion Vivian paused when she heard this. Even her eyes were gentle. She looked at the back of the youth with a sword on his back. She turned her head and said to Beligaju, "He's really cute, isn't he?" "Cute?" Beligaju raised his eyebrows and immediately shrunk his body. His two silvery white ears moved and the smile on his face could almost melt the sun. Hellion Vivian couldn't resist His Highness in this form. She reached out and hugged him, rubbing her face against him. "Big cute thing, let's go home." He was still so jealous and didn't mean what he said. Casso's lips curled up. "That's a pity. I have very good news that I want to tell you." "Good news?" Bailey Shangxie raised his eyebrows. "My mother has finally decided to divorce my father?" "Casso, how much do you want your family to be in discord? Tell me." "No, it's just..." Kasual paused for a moment and smiled evilly. "There's a new member in your family." Chapter 1096. There's a new member in the family? This sentence successfully brought the pair of little people back to the human world. Beligaju looked at the two little ones who were an eyesore and threw them into the bathtub, one in each hand. Bailey Shangxie wiped his little face and then began to wash his younger brother's hair. Upstairs, Hellion Weiwei had also woken up. The last one was successful. She, who had returned to her original height, whistled at herself in the mirror. When she lowered her eyes, there was deep gentleness in them. "Bodhi, you have to be happy too." On the 9-story tower, at the foot of Mountain Tenya, the chanting of Sanskrit was heavy. "The phoenix has truly returned. Bodhi can avoid wandering for the rest of his life." In the vast expanse, a man in white stood tall. His eyes were filled with shock. The little one did not understand and tugged at his long sleeve. "Master? Are you going back to Buddhism?" "No." The man squatted down and smiled at the little one. Snowflakes flew everywhere. In an instant he was like a piece of jade. In the villa, Hellion Vivian heard that her two sons had returned. She went downstairs happily and took out the beef and vegetables from the fridge, as well as the chocolate ice cream that she had bought earlier. The two little ones cleaned themselves up quite quickly. After they came out smelling good, they saw a table full of delicious food. However, what caught their attention was not the chocolate that they were most interested in. It was Hellion Vivian's belly. "It should be right." Qingchen tilted her little head and whispered to her brother, "There's one more member in the family. It means that mother is pregnant." Bailey Shangxie also nodded. "It's flat. I can't see anything." "It's not time yet." Qingchen felt itchy in her ears and kept scratching herself with her little claws. Bailey Shangxie knew that it was a mosquito bite. He took the little one aside and rubbed the toilet water with his fingers. "Don't scratch yourself next time." "What if you scratch yourself?" Qingchen finally felt comfortable, but her eyes still didn't move away from Hellion Vivian's belly. Bailey Shangxie looked back and found that his great demon father was not there. He turned to Hellion Vivian and said, "Mother, we have something to tell you." Hellion Vivian had already seen the two little tails following her around, one in each hand. "What's the matter?" Qingchen leaned over and whispered something in her ear. Hellion Vivian was also stunned. Indeed, her period had not come recently. Moreover, he would hug her to sleep every night. Even when he woke up in the morning, he would toss and turn for a while. Thinking of this, Hellion Weiwei also lowered her head and her eyes fell on her stomach. There was probably no need to check it out. There was a high possibility that it was there. Hellion Vivian smiled and reached out to hug her two sons. "Don't tell your father about this first." Bailey Shangxie also planned to do so. His father definitely didn't like children. "Maybe it's a little sister," Qingchen said reasonably. She touched Hellion Vivian's belly with her little hand. Brother and I are both boys. It should be a little sister when we give birth. Qingchen was a little sad when she said this. If it's a little sister, what if she gets bullied in the future? Bailey Shangxie held his little body, afraid that he would fall. His little face was very serious. I will protect you and your little sister. Okay. Hellion Vivian wanted to laugh. These two little guys, they hadn't been born yet. How did they know that it was a little sister? Baligaju left the living room and went to the study because of a call from the top manager. President, I heard that little CEO is back. There are many film companies here that want to work with little CEO. Without waiting for the top manager to finish, Baligaju slowly said, which film company is far from here? The top manager was a little confused. There's one in Shanghai. The rest are all in Beijing. The resources here are good. Pick up the one in Shanghai. Baligaju hung up the phone indifferently. Usually, shouldn't he consider the problem of resources? Although the top manager didn't understand what the boss was thinking, her ability to execute was top-notch. She got the contract done in minutes. The company in Shanghai suddenly felt like they had been hit by a pie. Well, to be honest, we didn't have much hope. After all, there are so many resources in Beijing and Sioju's company is there. Can you tell us why Sioju chose us? Feels a little surreal. Because you are far away. How could the top manager say such a hurtful truth? She looked up at the ceiling and blurted out a very encouraging sentence. Sioju never looks at resources. He only looks at ability. The producer in Shanghai was immediately moved. Don't worry, we definitely won't let Sioju down. The top manager. It wasn't the first time that His Highness had exiled an eyesore. After settling the matter, he walked out of the study. The three of them had finished chatting and were very consistent in their attitude of confidentiality. The atmosphere at dinner was very pleasant. After dinner, Baligaju leaned in a corner of the kitchen and watched his son wash the dishes with his arms crossed. This was the first time the little devil was doing such a thing. His small body moved here and there, his little face very cool. Qingchen wanted to help, so Bailey Shangxie handed her a bowl after washing it. The two brothers were having a lot of fun. Hellion Weiwei looked at the father and son trio from the side. She raised her phone and took a photo. After Bailey Jiaju heard the voice, he looked toward her and the corners of his mouth slowly curved up. Hellion Vivian felt that His Highness was using his beauty on her again. She had to resist the temptation, but the man still didn't let her go. Under the dim lights of the city, the temperature in the bedroom kept rising. He was very strong. He pressed down on her wrists and his breath kept surging up. Hellion Weiwei's mind was a piece of paste. The scalding heat that made people numb followed along her neck and kissed downwards, until his slightly cool lips held hers. Hellion Vivian came back to her senses and turned her face away. Not today. Upon hearing that, Bailey Jiaju's eyes darkened. No. Yes. Hellion Vivian wanted to push him away. But he pressed her back and said in a low voice, then sleep. Sleep like this. Their posture was very intimate. Hellion Vivian could feel the heat against her. But His Highness had always been very gentle when he hugged her, especially when she felt the kiss before she fell asleep. It was very light and a little cold. Hellion Vivian fell asleep. Baligaju looked at her face and his slender fingers moved back and forth. In the end, he unbuttoned one of her buttons. With a click, a photo was saved on his phone. Of course, he still liked her the most when she was in love. So, no? Huh. Take Sioju to South Africa and eliminate the temptation. Jean, how many times have I told you that we are in a serious business now? We can't do what bandits do and we can't kidnap men to be boss's men. But boss, you can buy Sioju with money. All the domineering CEOs in novels do this. I read one yesterday. K, you bunch of bulls. He was already speechless at his brothers and rubbed his temples with a headache. K also agreed. Let's do it, boss. Young L touched the glass bottle beside him with his gun. K, fuck, I was having a headache, not agreeing. Sure enough, it was right to come to discuss with our brothers. Hellion Vivian smiled and picked up the car key. Then I'll go to the company to find him now. Speaking of which, the Civil Affairs Bureau gets off work quite early. If I'm late, I won't be able to get in. Kay leaned back, obviously giving up. Boss, as long as you're happy. Helene Vivian was certainly in a good mood. Whistling, she put on her sunglasses and grabbed the handlebar with her right hand. The beautiful BMW Tomahawk rushed into the endless traffic. Helene Vivian was dressed very handsomely today. It was a proposal, so of course she had to look good. She had soft, waist-length chestnut-colored curly hair, black diamond earrings, and cropped pants that were wrapped around her legs, revealing her fair and slender ankles. She propped herself up on the motorcycle with one leg and stopped at the main entrance of Ju Wei Group. Helene Vivian felt that it was too troublesome to go up and come down again, so she took out her phone and sent a WeChat message to His Highness. "Are you busy?" When the sound of the system notification rang, the executives in the conference room looked up in unison. "I'm not in a hurry." Bailey Jiaju chuckled and sent the message. The others looked at the piles of information in front of them silently, their eyes shining as if they had seen some hope. "Then come down. I'm at the entrance of your company. I'm here to pick you up." Helene Vivian sent a WeChat message with sunglasses in her mouth, completely unaware that she was being watched. Baligaju walked to the transparent observation window. Most of the building was made of glass, so it was easy to see outside. "Stay there and don't move. I'll be down soon." Baligaju put his phone in his pocket and glanced at the small figure downstairs. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile that could make heaven and earth pale. The higher-ups could only watch as their boss left. After the door of the conference room closed, they couldn't help but rush to the window and ask curiously, "What was Seo Ju looking at just now? Someone must have come." "Didn't you hear Seo Ju ask the other party not to move?" The executives guessed. "Do you think it's Madam?" It was very likely. No, it wasn't just likely, it was definitely her. Just now the tone of the big boss voice was so doting. They had to find time to thank Madam properly for her appearance. Sob, 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 this torturous morning assembly is finally over. After tasting the taste of the sun, there was no way for him to let go. He wanted to drag her into the darkness and devour her completely, but he couldn't bear to do it again and again. No matter when, for thousands of years, he fell from god to demon, tore apart space and time and gave up his divine sense. All he wanted was to hold her in his arms like now. Chapter 1099. At the Civil Affairs Bureau. A photo and 2 IDs. Helene Vivian and Baligaju were like 2 ordinary couples, sitting there waiting to get a red book. There weren't many people at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Other people would probably pick a date to get their marriage certificate, such as 520 or something with a commemorative number. It was rare to see people like Helene Vivian who came to get their marriage certificate as they pleased. Therefore, His Highness was right when he said that she didn't have romantic cells. "I finally got you." Helene Vivian looked at the red book in her hand and was very proud. Baligaju raised his eyebrows. "Got you? I've been chasing you. Don't you know?" Helene Vivian looked back at him. Baligaju pulled her over to avoid the sun. He really didn't know that little Phoenix was still chasing him. "I must be too reserved," Helene Vivian said with a smile, "but it doesn't matter. You can't run away in the future anyway. This thing is legal in the human world. In the future you have to wear a ring when you go out to work. If those women come close you can tell them that you are mine." Bailey Jiaju leaned over and fastened the seatbelt for her. Then he kissed her smooth forehead. Helene Vivian felt that His Highness was especially gentle and obedient today. Sure enough, the tutorials in the novels were right. As a domineering Seo, he had to give the other party a surprise from time to time. "Since we have already gotten our marriage certificate, shouldn't we have an official wedding night?" Baligaju put his fingers on the steering wheel and looked at her with his beautiful eyes. Helene Vivian was caught off guard and was mesmerized by his beauty. Of course. It wasn't like they hadn't done a wedding night before. Reality proved that Helene Vivian was still too inexperienced. When she was pressed down by Baligaju, she felt like she was being controlled by a huge and fierce machine. It entered the softest and most vulnerable part of his body, maintaining a high frequency and high intensity operation. Apart from panting uncontrollably, there was nothing he could do to turn the situation around. Wait. He nibbled her ear gently. Lift your legs. How could there be such a huge contrast? When he spoke, he was as gentle as a gentleman who loved her, but his body was doing such a beastly thing. However, she still compromised and obediently raised her leg. In less than 2 seconds, she started to push him away in regret. No, I really don't want it anymore. It's too deep. Don't say no. His voice was low and pleasing to the ear, and it was filled with panting that made one's whole body numb, but there was a kind of almost crazy calmness. When he heard her say no, he severely punished her a few more times. In the end, she was defeated. Her heartbeat was unbearable and her cheeks were red. Finally, she opened her mouth slightly and carefully touched the tip of his tongue. She heard that his breathing was getting heavier and his body temperature was getting higher and higher. Now he only wanted to do one thing, which was to completely possess her and carve himself into her body, so that she would love him so much that there was no turning back, just like himself, completely falling. After that, he hugged her and sat her on his lap and entered her from below. Her shoulders trembled and she hugged his neck tiredly. She didn't even have the strength to support her body. Let's stop here today. I really can't. I'm not enough. He lifted her chin and kissed her deeply as if coaxing her to listen to him, but his body mercilessly repeated and broke through. No matter how long they did it, no matter how many times they did it, it was not enough. Hellion Vivian woke up in the middle of the night. She was very worried that something would happen to her body. She reached out and touched her lower abdomen, and was relieved that the aura was very smooth. However, the soft light that shrouded her eyes was definitely not in the villa. Hellion Vivian moved her hands and found that she was lying on a luxurious bed piled with roses. He was already dressed, but he was not wearing the suit he used to wear. He was dressed in a demon's attire with a cape that hung to the ground. His whole person was full of the aura of abstinence that she had felt when she first met him. Seeing that she was awake, he walked towards her and held her in his arms. His fingers played with her hair, and there was an imperceptible smile in his eyes as he looked at her. How many times have we done it? Still so useless. Beast. Hellion Vivian buried her head, not wanting him to see her red face. Why did you bring me to the demon world? Beligaju reached out and took the clothes that were placed next to her, and helped her put them on one by one. The demon's food, of course, has to be in the demon world. Hellion Vivian looked at him for a while, then leaned over and kissed him. It seems that you are reluctant to eat me. Otherwise, why did you choose the time and place? Demons are very particular when they eat, especially when it comes to souls like you. Beligaju chuckled and picked her up, not forgetting to rub her waist with his fingers. Let me take you to a place. I'm hungry. Can I eat first? Usually when Hellion Vivian made this request, a certain highness would agree. But this time he directly carried her and walked out of the door. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. This man was strange. The place Beligaju took her to was the demon world's first prison. 3,000 feet below, prosperity filled the air. This was the beginning of all evil. Countless demons clung to the surroundings, and the black stairs led to the endless abyss of hell. Beligaju's demon palace was at the top, like a crystal, the most pure existence. Your Highness, are you finally ready to eat this human woman? Are your eyes blind? That's obviously the Buddhist Phoenix. Your Highness is indeed powerful. You can even trick Phoenix. They have a contract between them. Your Highness will definitely eat her. Shut up, Phoenix will hear you. If she runs away, His Highness' plan will be ruined. Hellion Vivian was speechless. Come on, you are so loud. I can already hear you, okay? Plan? What plan does this man have? Hunt her down. From the beginning to the end? Hellion Vivian's pupils constricted as she looked at the man in front of her. Beligaju leaned over and placed her on the unique throne. When his fingers brushed across her cheeks, it did look like he was sizing up food. Then he opened his mouth and bit off the black gloves on his hands. Slowly he approached her neck. Question. Other than his looks. Hellion Vivian thought about it and raised her eyebrows. Kissing just because you don't like it? Question. What the hell is kissing just because you don't like it? Lying in Baligaju's arms, she only felt that her heart was a little full. Perhaps little Phoenix in Buddhism back then had always thought that there would be such a person who did not care how much blood was stained on her hands, who would see through her loneliness and treat her very, very well. He believed so. But she never thought that sometimes he was not good to her. He only thought about hunting for food. He approached her not because he saw through her loneliness but because he wanted to raise her. But it was such a person. Ever since he held her hand he had never let go. He wasn't wrong. He was never her prince. He was her invincible knight, splitting the chaos and stepping on the fire. He was as clear as the breeze, never leaving. At the side, Bailey Shangxie held the roses in his hands, looking as cool as ever. He had already checked on the internet. Some people had to say these words to the bride when they were getting married. He really did have a lot of things to say to his imperial mother. After thinking about it carefully, he raised his eyes and looked at Helian Weiwei with his small face. He earnestly said, "Imperial mother, if you don't want to live with imperial father in the future, just tell me. I will take you and my younger brother to find a new man together." Yes, this was what he had always wanted to say to his mother. He was very satisfied with his blessing today. Baligaju glanced at the little brat who was protected by the woman he loved most, and resisted the urge to throw this troublemaker out. Compared to Bailey Shangxie, Helian Qingchen's blessing was more practical. The little one said in a serious tone, "I heard from Imperial Father that everything he owns in the future will be yours. It's good. After all, it's easy for a man to learn bad things when he has money. According to the books, if you want to know if a man loves you, you have to see how much he gives you. It's not the kind of thing where he buys you a bag or takes you out for a meal. Instead, he will put all his assets under your name. Beauty Vivian, to be honest, I have always been afraid that you will be confused by father's beauty, worried that you will not be able to win against him. After all, he is so powerful, much more powerful than you. He can make a living with his face, but he relies on his talent. I especially admire him. Now I am not afraid anymore. His money is all with you, and he will not have the funds to find a mistress in the future. But there is still one thing to worry about, and that is father's face. You know, with his appearance, it is difficult to not attract the love of rich women. Maybe there will be someone who wants to keep him. But you don't have to worry, I will work hard to earn money. When the time comes, except for you, no one will dare to keep father." Helian Vivian once again felt that there must be something wrong with her little friend Qingchen's education. Chapter 1101. Indeed, Helian Weiwei wanted to propose marriage again in the human world. After all, she was still an arms tycoon. However, when she heard that there were too many things to prepare for the wedding, and that she would vomit whatever she ate, she put this matter aside. Helian Vivian didn't know if it was an illusion, but as long as His Highness got close to her, she would vomit even more. In less than 3 times, Bailey Jiaju sensed that something was wrong with her. He reached out and hugged her in his arms. There was a contract on the table about which company he was going to buy. "What's wrong with you these 2 days?" Baligaju took a cup and fed her water. It seemed that when it came to Helian Vivian, he would do everything himself. The butler was used to such a master, so he reached out and closed the door of the study. Helian Vivian lowered her eyes and drank the water in his hand. "It's nothing. Probably has something to do with the baby." Baligaju's fingers paused, and his eyes suddenly moved down and landed on her lower abdomen. There was a brief pause. "When did this happen?" "When I didn't let you touch me last time." Helian Vivian had no strength in her body. She wanted to lean on him and kiss him, but she didn't expect that the moment she touched his lips, the disgusting smell surged up again. She had no choice but to push him away and take deep breaths. Baligaju narrowed his eyes. "It rejects me." Indeed, His Highness's intuition was always so accurate. Helian Vivian took another sip of water to suppress the smell. "It was like this for the first 3 months. It will be fine after a while." Baligaju knew that she had to have this child. After all, she always liked children, especially his and hers. But he didn't want to see her suffer like this. As soon as he approached her, she would vomit. He went to ask the doctor, and they all said that 3 months was normal. This baby seemed to be very different from the 2 stinky brats. Seemed to be very obedient. Helian Vivian had just finished her checkup at the hospital. Before she could see Baligaju, she saw an old monk in a kasaya walking over from the other side. Ba. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and smiled. I didn't expect to see an old friend here. It's fate. The old monk said kindly, the child in your womb is fated to be with Buddhism. She is born to repel evil. When she is born it would be best for you to send her into Buddhism. This way she will be safe. Hellion Vivian thought for a moment and said, I don't think she's that weak. Yes, the young benefactor's vitality is very vigorous. It's just that she has the fate of Buddha. The old monk smiled. Benefactor, don't worry. When she is 4 years old I will let her go down the mountain. You have to believe me. I won't restrict anyone's freedom. However, she must abstain from meat and vegetables. After that she must leave the mountain. Within 5 years she must not live with His Highness and her brothers. As for who will take care of her, Old Monk and Lord Phoenix will decide together. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. She has to recognize her relatives. Of course, but you can't live together. The old monk said as he took out a sarira. Take this sarira with you. After 10 days you won't vomit so badly. Recently there was a rumor in the company. That was their CEO Ju was very likely to dump his current wife. Because in the past few days, some people saw that CEO Ju didn't return to the villa. It seemed that he ate and lived in the company. After hearing this news, some people were eager to take advantage of this opportunity to rise up. The first one to stand out was a female celebrity who had been very popular recently. She originally wanted to fall into Baligaju's arms. He had also learned a lot about this circle. She heard that Baligaju didn't return to the villa because that lady was pregnant. Also, he couldn't zip his pants up no matter how hard he tried. It was as if there was a hand blocking it. The director was scared and wanted to run out without caring about his pants, but the male actors who came in all stared at him. The next day, the rumor that the director didn't get married for so many years because he actually liked men spread throughout Hengdian studios. The demons thought proudly that this time, the director should have understood what they meant. Director. I don't understand at all. At the same time, there were rows of demons waiting for the live broadcast in the villa. This time there were more scenes of the Little Highness, so the demons firmly believed that their threat was effective. Let's go again tonight. Hellion Vivian asked, why are we going again? If it's effective, of course we have to strengthen it. What if it's not effective? Then we have to go even more. Until the director is scared to add more scenes. Hellion Vivian. In other words, no matter how many scenes Shangxia has, you will still go and scare the director, right? They know what they're doing. Baligaju was very dissatisfied that the woman in his arms put her attention elsewhere. His hand that was on Hellion Vivian's waist moved to the side. Is your mouth dry? Do you want to eat something? Okay. Hellion Vivian's stomach didn't have any obvious changes, but her appetite was very good. She wanted to eat something cold. This pregnancy was obviously different from the previous ones. She was not interested in meat anymore. Instead, she liked to eat vegetarian food. Baligaju specially bought a manor for Hellion Vivian to eat fresh vegetables. The dessert chef made ice cream from the fruits in the manor and put it in the fridge. In the hot summer it was the most suitable to eat these. The food that Hellion Vivian wanted to eat was basically prepared. Baligaju usually had a finance book in one hand and was responsible for feeding her with the other. Hellion Vivian always felt that this posture was not right to eat like this, so she took the ice cream cup and ate with both hands. Half of her body leaned on Baligaju's back and from time to time she would feed him 1 or 2 mouthfuls. This was the right way to behave like a domineering CEO. His Highness had never liked to eat sweet food. After 2 mouthfuls he stopped. His slender fingers gently stroked Hellion Vivian's hair, and his sitting posture was as condescending as usual. Once luxury seeped into one's bones, even in a lazy state, Baligaju's elegance was still there. The two of them nestled on the big sofa. One of them ate ice cream while the other read a book with her eyes lowered. Her fingers were gentle and they never left the other person's furry head. The soft light shone on the two of them through the floor-to-ceiling windows. From afar, Hellion Vivian looked like a pet that Baligaju had carefully raised. The sweetness of strawberries and lemons still lingered in the air. Even the tip of her tongue seemed to be stained with the taste of ice cream. Facts proved that the relic that the old monk had given Hellion Vivian was indeed there. In the days after that she never vomited. Hellion Vivian paused for a moment and reached out to touch her lower abdomen. This child was indeed fated with Buddha. Chapter 1103. In fact, it was not strange that the flesh and blood of the phoenix in the Buddhist world had Buddhist affinity. Bailey Shangxie had a pure devil physique. Although Hellion Qingchen had spiritual energy in her body, she was not fated to be Buddhist. Now that she had a child, she should be vegetarian and pray to Buddha. What are you thinking about? Baligaju turned his head and pinched Hellion Vivian's chin. Hellion Vivian put down the glass cup and lay on his lap casually. She rubbed against him comfortably. I'm thinking about the baby. She was so against you before because this child carries the gospel. Buddha. In the world, only His Highness would use such a mocking tone to pronounce this word. Hellion Vivian nodded. That's why she has to live in the temple on the mountain before she's 4 years old. That place won't have the resentment of the mortal world, so it's more suitable for her to grow up. Baligaju looked at her and knew that Hellion Vivian did not want to give the baby away. He pondered for a moment, then lowered his head and kissed her on the eyes. When you miss her, you can go to the mountain to see her at any time. It's best for a child who carries the gospel to not come into contact with the secular world. Hellion Vivian reached out and touched her belly. She thought of something and smiled instantly. But the old monk also said that our baby is very healthy. That's enough. Let's go to the mountain some other day. We have to see the living environment there with our own eyes. Baligaju rubbed her hair with his fingers, then picked her up and put her in his arms. His voice was very calm and matter-of-fact. If the environment is not good, let's ask Shangxie to donate money to build it. He's grown up and should learn to support his family. Hellion Vivian. In terms of education, His Highness was really a well-rounded talent. When they were having supper that day, Baligaju conveyed his intention to his eldest son. Bailey Shangxie was wiping his brother's mouth with a napkin. When he heard that they were going to build something for the baby in the future, he waved his pen and donated. Later, Hellion Vivian asked His Highness to evaluate his eldest son. Baligaju only gave her one sentence. A fool with a lot of money. Hellion Vivian. They were definitely not father and son. They were enemies. In short, the moment the two of them met, it was destined that the villa would not be peaceful. Bailey Shangxie, you haven't done the frog jump today. Our teacher said that this is abuse. As a family member, you can't treat your child like this. Are you human? Me. If you treat me like this again, I will take mother and the others and run away from home. Your mother and I are now legally husband and wife. You are at most an illegitimate child. Go and stay where you are. Yes, Bailey Shangxie was born before the two of them were married. To a certain extent, he was indeed an illegitimate child. Bailey Shangxie couldn't win against his black-hearted father, so he went to look for Hellion Vivian. Imitating his brother, he lowered his head and touched Hellion Vivian's stomach. The baby is so obedient, right, big brother? Qingchen looked up at him. Yes. Bailey Shangxie nodded coolly. As expected, apart from his father, everything in this family was so beautiful. Hellion Vivian looked at the two little guys standing beside her. They turned their heads and put their little ears on her stomach. He thought it was funny. It's only been a month. I can't hear anything. The book says that pregnant people should eat more and sleep more. Qingchen began to explain. Also, you should pay attention to prenatal education. I'll read advanced math questions for the baby later. Hellion Vivian. Wait a minute. Even your mother can't understand your advanced math problems. Can you not torture me like this, son? Father, mother doesn't seem to want to listen. Qingchen ran in front of Baligaju and said, this is not good. When the baby goes to kindergarten, he won't understand anything. Bailey Jiaju's slender fingers flicked his little forehead and calmly asked in reply, are you sure that your imperial mother's IQ is high enough to understand those advanced numbers that you're talking about? Hellion Qingchen turned his little body and looked at Hellion Vivian with disappointment. Then he shook his little head and walked away. It was as if he was a child who couldn't be taught. Hellion Vivian really wanted to pull the little one over and slap the table. If you have the ability, let's talk about how to make firearms. I'm good at this. What advanced math? What a waste of brain cells. Bailey Shangxie also felt that prenatal education was very important. Back then he didn't do a good job of prenatal education and was tortured by his father every day. That was why he became like this now. It had to be said that Shangxia's self-awareness was very good. Mother, the best prenatal education for the baby is to stay away from father in the future. This was the conclusion that Bailey Shangxie came up with after thinking for a long time. Although it was a little worse than his wedding blessing, what he said was the truth. Baligaju didn't hold back this time. After all, it wasn't a wedding scene. He reached out and pulled the little devil up. With a faint smile he said, "Let's go. Let's find a place to talk about prenatal education." Just like that, Bailey Shangxie was thrown into the bathtub with his clothes on. The little devil didn't like to be wet. However, Hellion Qingchen saw that his brother was taking a bath. Without saying anything, he began to squeeze bubbles for Bailey Shangxie. He wanted to help his brother wipe his back. After all, during this period of time, it was very inconvenient for his brother to take a bath when he went to visit him. It was in Sichuan. The scenery was very good, but it meant that the living conditions were very poor. Therefore he had to stand and use water to wash himself. After Hellion Qingchen inspected the shooting site, he decided that in the future he would bring money into every drama that his brother filmed. He heard that the game coins that Uncle Monkey and the others gave him could be exchanged for hundreds of thousands of real money. The guns that Brother Al gave him were also very valuable. He saved up his pocket money every year. It should be enough to support his brother. After all, his brother was a newcomer. If he didn't bring money into the production, what if he met someone who wanted to sleep with him in the future? After the little one helped his brother wash his back, he told Hellion Vivian about his worries. Hellion Vivian no longer doubted that there was a problem with her education. She just wanted to ask, "Does anyone dare to sleep with your brother?" That group of demons would have to dig up their ancestral graves. It's best that they don't dare. Otherwise, I would have to find a way to make them go bankrupt. After Qingchen said this sentence very seriously, he lowered his head and kissed Hellion Vivian's stomach. "Baby, big brother and little brother are going to sleep. You should go to bed early too. You have to listen to Beauty Vivian. Good night." Hellion Vivian was already very attracted by the little boy's cute appearance in the morning. She hugged his little body and kissed him for a while. She was once again warned by her son not to molest the little fresh meat. In this regard, Hellion Vivian was very disapproving. However, when she was sleeping, she felt her stomach move very slightly. For the past 2 days, their master had personally taken action. Every time they would be reduced to ashes. Why bother? After Baligaju entered the villa, he did not leave for the bedroom. Instead, he went to take a shower first. When he held Hellion Vivian in his arms again, his entire body was already filled with the pleasant smell of mint. Hellion Vivian knew that he was back, so her left hand naturally wrapped around him. As expected, hugging a certain highness to sleep was the most comfortable. Just like that, more and more fodder was buried under the rose tree. Gradually, the villa in the suburbs of the capital became famous. The first to notice it were the exorcists who had lived in the capital for a long time. Although they were not as famous as the Pei and Si families, they were from a prestigious sect. The number of demons in the capital was decreasing rapidly. Although this was a good sign, it was too strange. Moreover, they had investigated and found that the demons who had cultivated for thousands of years had all disappeared from this place. 2 people in black cloaks who were dressed as exorcists raised their heads and looked at the noble villa in front of them. One of them walked over, narrowed his eyes and pressed the doorbell. Bailey Shangxie was still tying a napkin for his brother. When he heard the sound, he glanced at the black-clothed butler beside him. The black-clothed butler carried a tray and walked to the door. The door slowly opened, and the 2 exorcists who were covered in spiritual aura entered his sight. They seemed to be chasing someone. There was still some mud on the soles of their shoes. "May I ask who the 2 of you are?" The 2 exorcists were dressed very formally. One of them was even holding an exorcist gun in his hand. He moved the gun to his left and smiled. "Hello, sir. We are the special police. We are chasing a fugitive. He should be around. We were worried that he would run into the villa, so we wanted to come in and take a look to ensure his safety." "Since they are the police, let them in. It was clearly a child's voice, but there was an indescribable evil in it. The exorcists looked to the side and saw Bailey Shangxie, who was sitting at the dining table and feeding his younger brother. Bailey Shangxie was now a popular child star in the mainland. He was wearing the tiger head pajamas that his brother had bought for him. He did not look as cold as he did on the screen. However, the two exorcists still felt that something was wrong. Would an ordinary child speak in such a tone? Even if the other party was a star, wasn't he a little too mature? What do the two of you want to investigate? Bailey Shangxie wiped the corner of his mouth. Although the appearance of his thin lips was slightly curved, it still gave people the feeling that he was up to no good. The exorcists looked at each other and smiled. We're just looking. There shouldn't be a problem with the first floor. Chapter 1105. The exorcist's expression changed. He slowly turned his head as if he was worried that his identity would be exposed. Bailey Shangxie was still smiling. He held a transparent glass cup in his small hand, but there was a black gemstone ring on his thumb. He looked luxurious everywhere. I'm just joking. Why did you stop? The exorcists also laughed dryly. Bailey Shangxie continued, but you can't go upstairs. My mother is still sleeping. She's pregnant recently and needs to rest. They couldn't go to the second floor? The exorcists paused and looked at each other again. Little friend, we're worried that there will be criminals hiding on the second floor. After all, the space up there is big. Sometimes criminals will specially choose this kind of place to attack. It's better to search. Bailey Shangxie glanced at them and then slowly put down the white napkin. His voice was very calm. Since you insist, I'll bring the two of you up to walk around. As he spoke, he lowered his head and said to Qingchen, brother will be back soon. Go and ask mother to go downstairs to eat breakfast. Don't eat beef anymore. Your stomach can't digest it later. You have to eat digestive tablets. You don't like that taste. Qingchen was wearing cow pajamas. She stopped eating when she said she would. She was very obedient. Her white and tender little tail even made a sound when she ran. When the two exorcists saw this scene, they felt that this villa was even more strange. There were so many unclean things around, but only this place didn't have a trace of demonic aura. Moreover, the demons they caught along the way had said that the demons that disappeared for no reason recently were all gone because they went to the villa. But why were the two children here not affected at all? Moreover, they were even more polite than ordinary children. What does the two of you look like? Bailey Shangxie led the two of them into the depths of the villa and asked casually, I don't think the news mentioned it. The exorcists were still looking around in the dark. When they heard his question, their gazes landed on his little tiger's head. It's a big guy. It's very cruel when it kills people. It's better if you don't see it. Oh. Bailey Shangxie stood at the side, his eyes shining. I hope you can find that criminal soon and bring him to justice. However, my mother doesn't like the smell of blood, especially now that she's pregnant. So, it's better for the two of you not to come to the villa so easily during this period of time. The warning was so obvious that it was hard to ignore. The exorcists narrowed their eyes and looked at the little boy in front of them again. However, he just smiled evilly. We should be almost done. My father taught me that I must know how to treat guests. The housekeeper has prepared tea and snacks. If you two don't mind, you can stay and have some. The exorcist desperately wanted to know what this little brat was up to. There's something wrong with this celebrity child. One of the exorcists lowered his voice. The other exorcist nodded and stroked his own exorcist spear. Right, I forgot to remind the two of you. Bailey Shangxie turned around and looked at the person holding the spear. Our family doesn't like to use force the most, so it's best for the police uncle to put away this spear. Otherwise, when the time comes, the spear will be gone and so will the person. The exorcist's arms suddenly froze. Bailey Shangxie continued to lead the way. The moment he lowered his eyes, an evil light emitted from them. It was a pity that such delicious people couldn't be eaten. It was his principle not to kill in front of his mother. The exorcists walked around but didn't find any Yin energy in the villa. But it was because of this that they became more and more flustered. Those who understood Yin and Yang knew that the more powerful a person was, the better they were at hiding their aura. This place was obviously clean. It didn't seem like it. And this celebrity boy in front of them was definitely not simple. In the living room on the first floor, Helene Vivian sat on the dining chair and watched her eldest son come down with two people dressed as exorcists. She raised her eyebrows. There are guests at home. The two uncles said that they are the police. After Bailey Shangxia finished speaking, he took the small spoon in Qingshen's hand, scooped a piece of cream mousse for her and fed it to her younger brother. The invisible coldness around them finally disappeared, and the two exorcists gradually relaxed their grip. "Hello, madam. We are here to catch criminals. Recently this area has not been very peaceful. I wonder if you have noticed anything strange when you sleep at night?" Helene Vivian chuckled. "No, I sleep very well every night. What about other situations? For example, do you hear any abnormal sounds?" The exorcist asked. There had to be something wrong. When Helene Vivian heard this, she put down the wooden chopsticks in her hand with a hint of playfulness. In the past, she was the one who asked others these questions. She didn't expect that one day she would be the one being asked. Seeing that she didn't immediately speak, the exorcist thought that she had thought of something, so he wanted to speak again. At this moment, a man walked down the stairs. He was wearing a well-ironed black suit and a pair of black gloves on his hands. He seemed to have just finished dealing with something and was about to throw away the gloves on his hands. This man reeked of blood. Although it was very faint, it was indeed there. The exorcist narrowed his eyes and looked at Beligaju. The man didn't even look at them. He walked directly in front of Helene Vivian and reached out to stroke her fluffy head. "Why are you awake so early today?" "The police are here. Qingshen asked me to come down for breakfast." Helene Vivian bit into a bun and fed Beligaju a bite. "The police?" Bailey Jiaju was never one to reject Helene Weiwei. He swallowed the soft white flower in his mouth and set his gaze on the two exorcists. He curled his thin lips into a faint smile and said, "It just so happens that there have been some ignorant people coming over recently. Both of you can be of some use." There was a hidden meaning in his words. Could it be that the demons that disappeared were because of him? The two exorcists held the exorcist guns in their hands tightly. One of them turned his back and drew a yellow talisman. He wanted to make Beligaju reveal his true form when he wasn't paying attention. Unexpectedly, as soon as the yellow talisman was drawn, it was blocked by Qingshen's intentional action of drinking soup. "Damn it! I missed." The exorcist gritted his teeth and watched as the man's cold gaze fell on the two of them. The other exorcist pressed his companion's hand. "Don't make any more moves. Be careful not to alert the enemy." Chapter 1106. Hearing this, the exorcist with the talisman could only stare at Beligaju. He lowered his arm that was about to raise again. The yellow talisman in his palm moved and was hidden in his wide sleeve. Helene Vivian acted as if she did not see the movement just now. She looked up with a faint smile and said, "Officers, you can describe the murderer's appearance. We can inform the police at any time if we see him. Because the murderer escaped in the middle of the night, we don't know his exact height and appearance. We have to wait for the identification department to send a photo to confirm." The older exorcist smiled and took out a business card. "If you notice anything wrong, madam, you can call us on this number. Especially if you notice anything strange about the people next to you, you must inform us immediately. If there's nothing else, my colleagues and I will take our leave first. We're very sorry to have disturbed you and your family's meal." As he spoke, the exorcist glanced at Bailey Jiaju, who was standing beside him. The man's eyes were indifferent and there was a smile at the corner of his mouth. It seemed to be a faint mockery, as if they were ants in front of him. The exorcist's eyes darkened. They brushed past Bailey Shangxie, who was still feeding Qingshen. The latter's eyes were shining. It was obvious that he was hungry. Helene Vivian stood up with a smile. "I'll send the two officers off." The father and son put away their thoughts at the same time. "Okay." When the exorcist saw that it was Helene Vivian who came to send them off, he had a countermeasure in his heart. Walking out of the villa, they saw a courtyard covered with falling white petals. The two exorcists did not leave immediately. Instead, they mysteriously brought Helene Weiwei to the side and asked, "Madam, is there anything different about your family recently? For example, are they interested in bright red meat, or do they often sleepwalk and look for food in the middle of the night?" "They don't like to eat meat. They only like to drink blood and devour souls. Hellion Vivian did not say the rest of her words. The exorcist frowned. Madam, perhaps it's a little rude to say this. We suspect that your family has. There are no ghosts at our bungalow. There is no sound of glass beads or children crying on the second floor at night. The faucet in the bathroom is turned on tight and no water came out. The people at home did not eat too much for no reason and they did not morph into another person. Hellion Vivian supported her chin with one hand and looked at them lazily. If these problems really arise, I can solve them myself. There is no need to trouble the police. The exorcist who was interrupted was stunned. No, madam, you can't solve these problems yourself. Actually, my colleagues and I are not police officers at all. I do, Hellion Vivian interrupted him, because I'm also an exorcist. The two of them were stunned again and the words they wanted to say were completely stuck in their throats. Hellion Vivian moved her finger. With the help of the water stains on her fingertips, she drew a glowing talisman seal. The Buddhist aura seemed to appear in front of them. That was the divine exorcism incantation. The exorcist's eyes widened. He could not believe that someone could draw a long-lost divine incantation with just a casual drawing. You? Hellion Vivian retracted her hand and smiled faintly. I opened a taobao shop and often help others deal with unclean things. My taobao shop has a good reputation on the internet. The number of orders accepted and the positive ratings are very high. In the future, if the two of you have big orders that you can't deal with, you can come to me. However, my family doesn't like to be disturbed. Perhaps the murderer you're looking for is somewhere else. If the two of you want to save your lives, give up the idea of coming back at night. Otherwise, I won't need him to do anything. I'll make you regret investigating this bungalow. After saying this, Hellion Vivian turned around and walked away. The exorcists really could not figure out the identity of the person in front of them. They did not understand why there was such a powerful exorcist hidden in this bungalow. Who is she? There was no record of her in the yin and yang world. Damn it. One of the exorcists watched Hellion Vivian walk into the bungalow and clenched his fists. There's clearly something wrong with that man and the child just now. With her around, we can't enter the bungalow. Another exorcist said in a deep voice, it seems that we can only wait for the other party to come out before we can make a move. That little boy is a celebrity. It's impossible for him not to come out of the bungalow. The exorcists were right. Bailey Shangxie did have to go out to work. At noon his agent called. Bailey Shangxie had changed into a black t-shirt and cropped shorts. He was wearing a pair of white shoes and his hands were filled with tinkling things. Originally, his appearance was the type that was stunning. Now he was wearing a boy's red sun hat and a pair of big black sunglasses on his small face. He was standing there waiting for the nanny van. The weather was hot today, so he did not ask his younger brother to send him off. Although he was young, he looked like a young master standing there. He was a little like the vampire he played in the web drama. His skin was excessively fair. The exorcists turned sideways and the yellow talismans in their hands moved slightly. They flew towards Bailey Shangxie from all four directions. In their opinion, Bailey Shangxie was not as powerful as that mysterious man. No matter how old the demon was, the two of them would definitely be able to trap him if they worked together. Moreover, the sun was at its brightest now. Even if the other party had some skills, he would definitely not be able to escape. However, what they did not expect was that the moment the yellow talismans touched the corner of Bailey Shangxie's clothes, the entire talisman would spontaneously combust without any fire. The blue-green flames burned in the eyes of the exorcists, turning into disbelief and astonishment. How was this possible? The array that the two of them had set up together was broken just like that? Bailey Shangxie looked at their expressions and slowly curved his thin lips. Police uncle, you don't seem to have taken my warning seriously at all? I thought that after mother sent you out, you would dispel those stupid thoughts in your heads. Now it seems that you are really not afraid of death. The two exorcists took a big step back. Before the little boy made a move, the demonic hound that appeared in front of him made them unable to withstand the soaring demonic aura, not to mention the mist that was emitted from the little boy's back. You are a high-level demon? Damn it! How could there be a high-level demon in the city? And he was actually the most popular youth idol? Bailey Shangxie had no intention of killing these two people. Looking at their chaotic breaths, he just turned sideways and continued to wait for the car. His side profile was very cool. You can't even beat me and you still want to deal with my father. I advise you to give up early and not disturb my mother's pregnancy. Chapter 1107. You're all demons. Your mother and brother are both humans. The exorcist clutched his chest in discomfort. They never thought that they would be suppressed by a little boy to the point of being unable to move. Moreover, the real powerful person had not even made a move yet. Humans and demons walk different paths. You shouldn't live together at all. The exorcist roared the last sentence in a deep voice. It was also this sentence that made Bailey Shangxia's beautiful almond-shaped eyes narrow dangerously. You're courting death. Brother, don't listen to them. A clear and tender voice sounded from behind the three of them. It turned out that Enchanting was worried that Bailey Shangxia would be bitten by mosquitoes while filming outside. She ran out of the villa with a bottle of toilet water in her two little hands. Compared to Bailey Shangxia, his whole body exuded the scent of a human. The exorcist endured the pain and said, "Little kid, we're doing this for your own good. Your brother is still young now. When he grows up he will hunt high-level demons like human souls the most. The closer a person is to them, the more they will become their target. Other than your mother, you're the most dangerous." Hearing the exorcist's words, Bailey Shangxia had the thought of killing for the first time in his life. His eyes were stained with blood. He would never hurt his brother and mother. Looking at Bailey Shangxia's expression, Enchanting knew that his anger was rising. She tiptoed and reached out to touch Bailey Shangxia's head, just like when she was in her mother's stomach. It was only then that Bailey Shangxia calmed down. The redness in his eyes had also faded a lot. He pulled the little one's hand down and instructed sternly, "Hurry up and go back. The sun is shining brightly outside. It's too hot." In Bailey Shangxia's heart, no one in the world was as obedient as his brother and the baby that was about to be born. They must be raised well. Yes. Enchanting had always been a little gentleman, but this did not mean that he was someone to be trifled with. The little one walked in front of the two exorcists and stopped in his tracks. "If you still want to develop your exorcism career here, it's best that you don't come and affect my family's lives. As for what you said, I don't believe that my brother would lose his mind and hurt me and my mother. With Imperial Father around, such things will not happen. Moreover, my brother is wearing black earrings that suppress the magic in his ears. He is not a killing machine. He knows who can and can't kill. My brother is very good to me. If you are being unreasonable, I will let you taste the taste of bankruptcy." An exorcist was not a saint. There was no one in the world who did not love money. Moreover, things were different now. The more outstanding an exorcist group was, the more money they needed. Only then could they interact with the upper class of society and eliminate the remaining demons in the city more conveniently. However, the two exorcists had never expected to encounter such a situation. How could humans stand on the side of demons? Although they had formed a family, their innate nature could not be changed. Demons were destined to only feed on souls and blood. These two people could not be safe for the rest of their lives. It was not that they had not encountered similar situations before. Under normal circumstances, after knowing that the other party was a demon, no human would have the courage to continue living with them. Because one day if they didn't face separation they would be eaten. The latter was very likely. After all, demons never took human lives seriously. But Enchanting's protection was so obvious that there was even a hint of hostility in it. This made it impossible for the two exorcists to find a breakthrough. Seeing Qingshan walk into the villa, he did not look at the exorcists anymore and jumped into the car. The gold medal manager was still in the car. When he saw the two people standing outside, he looked up from the documents. "Who is that?" It was rare for someone to appear in the villa where the CEO lived. "Someone who is looking for trouble with Dad." After Bailey Shangxia said this, he put on his hat, leaned on the seat and closed his eyes to rest. Chapter 1108. Hearing this, the manager rolled down the window and sized up the two exorcists with a pitiful look. Although he didn't know the other party's identity or what had happened, just the fact that they had provoked Ju meant that they wouldn't end well. The exorcists didn't understand the meaning in the manager's eyes. The two of them were injured. If they continued to force themselves, it would only make their situation more dangerous. Moreover, until now, that unfathomable man hadn't even made a move. This situation obviously didn't benefit them at all. The two exorcists looked at each other and decided to go back first. However, the manager was right about one thing. The consequences of provoking a certain highness were usually not very good. The exorcists originally wanted to go back first to get reinforcements. After all, they couldn't let a high-level demon devour demons in the city like this. If that was the case, there would be a day when they couldn't clean up the mess. However, as soon as the two of them walked into the hall, they saw the man they wanted to deal with sitting on the main seat. He supported his chin with one hand, his diamond-like fair skin and the black feathers falling from the sky finally revealed his overwhelming demonic nature. The exorcists were shocked. Even their ink-colored pupils started to shake. A person was lying at the man's feet. That was the most powerful exorcist in the AO family. There were screams all around, but there was no smell of blood. Sitting next to the man was their master. Unlike when he saw demons in the past, their master's face was pale. "You come here." Their master's voice was trembling. The exorcists didn't dare to resist. They walked over and looked at Beligaju warily. "You are not allowed to go to this gentleman's villa in the future. Do you understand?" The exorcists didn't understand. The other party was clearly a demon, but their master was going to let him go just like that. The old man couldn't explain so much to his two disciples. He leaned on his walking stick and his beard flew up. "Say yes." The two exorcists clenched their hands and lowered their eyes. "Yes, master." When the old man heard this promise, he turned to Beligaju and said, "These two children are still young and don't know the rules. I promise you that something like this will never happen again." Beligaju chuckled softly. His graceful voice slowly flowed out. He stood up and still didn't make a move. The surging black fog behind him transformed into thousands of demons and demons, sweeping towards the two exorcists. It was like the afternoon of the dusk of the gods, the demonic energy overshadowing the heavenly Tao. Such a scene was only heard of in books. They had never really seen it. Their limbs were numb to a certain extent. They didn't even dare to move. The two exorcists could no longer describe what they were feeling right now. Watching the godlike man walk past them, they could only break out in cold sweat. They didn't even have the strength to raise their hands. Just the demons behind him alone could easily devour the entire AO clan in an instant. How could there be so many of them? He was just a demon. How could so many great demons follow him willingly? The exorcists had too many questions to ask, but most of them were unwillingness. After Beligaju left, the temperature in the room seemed to have returned. The bone-chilling coldness finally disappeared. But it was because of this that the two exorcists felt very incompetent. "Master, why didn't you let us make a move?" The old man glared at them. "You still want to make a move? Do you know who that person is? Why did you make a move? Do you think you're living too peacefully? Do you want to die?" The two exorcists knew that their master was right. The pressure on their chests was still there. The scene just now was unforgettable. The old man stroked his chest and continued, "Why do you think he appeared here? He even arrived here earlier than you. He's using this method to tell you that if he wants to crush the AO family, it's just a matter of raising his hand. Do you still want to make a move on him? Do you want the entire AO family to die with you?" Hearing this, one of the exorcists finally calmed down. He thought for a moment and asked, "Master, who is he?" "The king who fell from the heavenly Tao into the demon world." The old man's voice was long. "You and I should be glad that he has something to hold him back now. Otherwise, according to his temper back then, from the moment you stepped into the AO family, you would only see a pile of flesh and bones." The exorcists widened their eyes. "Hold him back. Master, are you talking about the mother and son in the villa?" "That's right. That's the hold that reminds him not to make a move. And Ran and Lu, listen to me. You can investigate anywhere, but don't investigate the villa." The old man's eyes were shining. As long as that mother and son pair make a mistake, the world will be in chaos. That has never been his weakness, but what little humanity he has left. He hasn't massacred the AO family now because he doesn't want his wife to be unhappy. But if you still dare to disturb their lives, the AO family will be gone. The two young exorcists were a little stunned when they heard that. They had always thought that if they lived with a demon, they would definitely die without a complete corpse. But who would have thought that this would be the result? Could a human really hold back a demon? After the old man finished instructing them, he was still worried, so he called for someone to let these two juniors rest. Although he was old, he had only heard of that person. Today when he saw him, he knew that other than having the evil of a demon, he also had extraordinary means. He didn't kill his two disciples in the villa. Instead, he went straight to the AO family. Did he want to test them? Not at all. He was telling them, once he makes a move, he will immediately eliminate the entire AO family. This was even more ruthless than directly beating their two disciples into ashes in the villa. He was the most elegant man in the world, but he was incomparably terrifying. If the AO family still wanted to have what they had now, they must not provoke this person. The hour hand slid across the smooth surface. Hellion Vivian woke up from her afternoon nap and sat on the soft carpet with Qinchin, playing Plants vs. Zombies. During this time, Qinchin woke up 3 times to get fruits for Hellion Vivian. More. Beligaju was not here, so Qinchin consciously took the responsibility of taking care of Hellion Vivian. One of the reasons was to let her eat more. Hellion Vivian blocked the little one's hand, raised her eyebrows and asked, "Where is your father?" Little Qinchin lied without batting an eyelid. He said he was going to discuss a business deal. Chapter 1109. Discuss business? Hellion Vivian seemed to have thought of something. She slapped her forehead and her long hair fell down. She looked very lazy and beautiful. "Oh no, the people from Juwei Group begged me to let your father go to the company as little as possible." Qinchin was very calm. "It's okay. I think father should be discussing business outside the company this time." "Is that so?" Hellion Vivian looked at her youngest son and smiled softly as if she knew everything. "All right, no matter what business he's talking about, let's talk about your education first. Do you really not want to go to kindergarten?" Speaking of this, Qinchin was still a little troubled. "Originally, I planned to go to school slowly, but I calculated that if that's the case, I still have 13 years before I can come out to earn money. Now that there are so many people around brother who have designs on him, it's time to use money. Moreover, mother, you're pregnant, so I have to earn money first. You know, it's not easy to support a family." Hellion Vivian. "You're just a 4-year-old child. Why are your thoughts so complicated? People who don't know will think that our family is very poor. The main thing is that Uncle Monkey said that if you want to make the other party go bankrupt, you have to be richer than the other party." Qinchin looked serious. "So I decided not to go to kindergarten. I'll take Uncle Monkey and the others to earn money. Mother, you take care of the baby at home and don't talk to strangers. For example, the 2 fake police uncles who came to the house today. You can't come into contact with them. You have to listen to father." Hellion Vivian. "You're speaking like an adult. Who's the parent? Also, you can't think of making the other party go bankrupt. What kind of joke is this?" Qinchin sighed again. "I can only accompany you for a while. I still have to look for brother tonight. If anyone dares to let him drink, I'll buy their company." Hellion Vivian was speechless. "No one will let a 4-year-old child drink. Son, you're thinking too much. It's always like this in TV dramas. Those popular idols all have to entertain them. Big brother is so handsome, it's very dangerous." Qinchin's eyes widened as if saying, "Isn't that right?" Hellion Vivian pulled her son into her arms. "Come, let's talk about the idol drama you watched. Look at this too. Domineering, see?" Hellion Vivian nodded. "That's right, but when was there a child drinking? It's different in the entertainment industry. What if I run into you?" Hellion Vivian paused. Her son's tone was so self-righteous that she had nothing to say. "All right, if you want to buy it, then buy it." Why was it that she couldn't even win over her son now? Little Qinchin touched Hellion Vivian's face again. "Beauty Vivian, don't be discouraged. Father and I won't despise you for being stupid. It doesn't matter if you don't understand the advanced mathematics questions. Father said that this is the only way to average the IQ of the family." Hellion Vivian was speechless. Beligaju had just entered the villa when he heard this conversation. He reached out his slender fingers and grabbed the back of Qingshen's collar. Don't call your mother stupid in the future, understand? But father often talks to mother like this too. Qingshen was small to begin with, so when he was picked up he looked like a kitten with all 4 legs in the air. Beligaju glanced at his son indifferently, his voice as cold as ever. He's my wife. Only I can bully my wife. Hellion Vivian was speechless. Another day passed and little Qingshen brought a few burly men to the filming location. In his words, there had to be someone who could stand up for his big brother. Thus, every actor who wanted to join the set turned pale with fright when they saw the 1.9-meter-tall old A. Where did this triad boss come from? Where were the security guards? The security guards couldn't do anything. This child usually likes to suppress newcomers and always uses his family's connections to flirt with those female celebrities. The others in the set are angry but don't dare to say anything, afraid of offending him. Monkey opened a small notebook that recorded the information of all the crew members. Chapter 11:10. Upon hearing this, Qingshen tilted her head and said, if that's the case, Uncle Monkey, go and tell the director that we'll increase our investment and get him to remove this person. Since Little Boss had spoken, the rough men were naturally full of energy. This second male lead was a scumbag to begin with. Previously no one dared to expose him. Now that Qingshen was here, of course they couldn't just let it go. At the start, the second male lead was still complaining about how he had been wronged on Weibo. It was fine that the child didn't know the rules, but she actually asked his bodyguard to beat him up. As he spoke, he posted a photo of himself being beaten up on the internet. His words were directed at Bailey Shangxie. This was his plan. First, he would tarnish Bailey Shangxie's reputation on Weibo. Then he would ask the director to remove that kid's part. After doing all this, he even called a reporter he knew. He was waiting to see Bailey Shangxie get scolded. However, he neglected one thing. There was a type of person in this world called hackers. Less than 10 minutes after the second male lead posted on Weibo, another Weibo post appeared on the internet. It was all about the dirty things he had done on set. One thing was stacked on top of another and his arguments were well-founded. When the second male lead turned on his phone, his expression changed. He said that whoever dared to fabricate such lies to hurt him would be held responsible. In the end, less than a minute later, Monkey posted a few more photos. The photos were very obvious. The second male lead was drinking with an actress. His perverted hand even touched her chest. When these photos appeared, the second male lead was completely flustered. He started to contact his manager. However, it was already too late. Including what had happened on set, it was also posted on the internet. To be honest, in the industry it was not a big deal for a veteran to bully a newcomer. However, he didn't even let a child off. This was a bit of a scumbag. Moreover, it was obvious that he wanted to hit Bailey Shangxie. There was no such thing as acting without practice. The director had already called for cut, but he still threw it. His expression was ferocious and full of jealousy. Previously he had mocked Bailey Shangxie and his words were also found. When the netizens saw that the little CEO was being bullied, they were instantly furious. For a moment, many people in the industry were reposting it. After all, he was the nation's older brother. Although Bailey Shangxie was young, many female celebrities in the industry liked him because he usually didn't say a word and only knew how to take care of his younger brother. Many big shots were saying, no matter what, we can't have thoughts of harming children. Just like that, the second male lead became an actor that everyone despised. Even half of the commercials that he had previously negotiated were withdrawn. You're asking for a reason? The wives of advertisers were all fans of the nation's brother. That was how willful he was. Qingshen didn't expect her brother to be so popular. He hadn't even started to attack, but all the cute sisters and aunties were already on their side. She even told her brother to focus on filming and take care of him. Qingshen was still eating when she saw the post on Weibo. Bailey Shangxie must have fed her. After thinking for a while, he took a photo and posted it. Big brother takes good care of me. He gave me all the shrimp dumplings. I'm so full now. I'm rubbing my tummy. A white bear t-shirt and soft little hands. When the netizens saw the post, they knew that the person who posted it was Qingshan. Their faces were full of cuteness. The little Xiao only posted one word on Weibo. Ha, that's right, it was a ha. Although it was only one word, the little Xiao could often express a cold tone. As expected of her older brother, he was always cool. His style was completely different. He was shown off by the two little people again. The second male lead was still struggling, but before he could recover, the production team informed him that he didn't have to go anymore. Are you kidding me? Get the director, that old guy, to talk to me. Do you know who I am? Without my father's investment, do you think you can film anything? It was also an investment, but Qingshan was more sensible than him. When she saw the director's assistants, she would greet them politely. However, this person really didn't know how to respect others at all. After that, the director's assistant asked Qingshan, was the investment decision made by Xiao Ju? She didn't expect that such a cold person like Xiao Ju would be so good to her son. No. Qingshan was getting water for Bailey Shangxie at that time. It was my decision. I can't let anyone bully Big Brother. I don't like to use my hands, so I just use money. The director's assistant. What did you use money for previously? Our family's upbringing is like this. Qingshan was very serious. When Beauty Wei Wei chased Daddy, she also used money. It was said that 20 taels of silver for a kiss was enough to get Daddy. Sister, as a girl you have to work hard to earn money. Only then can you sleep with the person you want to sleep with. The director's assistant sounded so reasonable. Why couldn't she refute it? However, she didn't expect the legendary Mrs. Xiao to be so fierce. He was really amazing. The next day, Qingshan's words were published in the newspaper. Hellion Vivian looked at the words and the corner of her mouth twitched. When did I teach my son this? Didn't you buy my kiss for 20 taels of silver? Beligaju put down the book in his hand and asked casually. Hellion Vivian recalled what happened back then and lightly coughed twice. At that time I didn't know you were the third prince. If I had known, I would have definitely given you more money. Didn't you see that I bought a lot of roses to chase after you later? Also, I gave you that armament. Although you don't need it, it's all money. Yes. Beligaju's lips curled up. He put her hand to his lips and kissed it. Whatever you say is right, my respected Han. Hellion Vivian felt that although she was the master on the surface, a certain highness's perfunctory tone was too obvious. It was as if he was mocking her intelligence. In the end, after thinking about it, she decided to use her kissing skills to conquer a certain someone. In the end, just as her lips touched his, the man took the initiative and hugged her waist. First, he gently bit her lower lip. Then he slowly made her unable to resist, until the minty fragrance completely permeated her breath. Someone once said that watching Beligaju kiss Hellion Vivian, one would understand the meaning of deep affection. The way he tried his best to suppress the depth in his eyes and softened his grip. The sight of his face as he slowly kissed her was so handsome that it was intoxicating. After the kiss, Hellion Vivian didn't even have the strength to resist. She was gently held in his arms. He lowered his head and kissed the corner of her mouth. At that moment, the surroundings were so quiet that only the sound of her heartbeat could be heard. Chapter 11:11. Again and again. Hellion Vivian felt that all the blood in her body seemed to be made of honey, sticky, soft and hot. She couldn't help but bury half of her face in the man's arms, reaching out and hugging Beligaju's waist. From the beginning to the end, Beligaju just quietly hugged her, his slender fingers stroking her hair, and the corners of his mouth were obviously doting. After that, there was no difference from before. When the two of them were together, time always passed very quickly. After 4 months, Hellion Wei Wei's stomach finally started to show signs of protrusion. The old monk appeared again and gave Hellion Vivian another relic. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. Since it's the place where my child will live in the future, I want to go and take a look. Amitba. The old monk smiled gently, of course. She didn't know if it was because Sakya had returned and the true Buddha had become one. Recently, Buddhism really had a little bit of tolerance of great enlightenment. The place where the old monk lived was not a no-man's land. In fact, it was on a hillside in Hebei. When they walked in, they could see the villagers planting trees at the foot of the mountain. They seemed to rarely see people coming. They all stopped what they were doing and looked at Beligaju and the others. It was a very simple place and could even be said to be a little backward. This could be seen from the villagers' clothes. But it was because this place was backward that there were not so many disturbances. The smiles on the villagers' faces were natural, and even their restraint was real. It had to be said that this place was indeed suitable for children with Buddhism to live. It was just that this mountain was full of trees and hid the Qingxi tomb. It was not easy to enter. Even if someone entered, it would depend on whether they were fated to find the temple. The people who lived in the temple were very special. Hellion Vivian could see the remnants of evil in each of them at a glance. They are all criminals who were once wanted. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and asked the old monk. The old monk recited a Buddhist sutra. There are only monks in the temple, there are no criminals. I've even dealt with one of them before. The police tried many methods but failed to catch him. You're telling me that you only have monks here? Hellion Vivian chuckled. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone about this. Didn't you say that you would take me to see who will raise my baby after he turns 4? Where is he? The old monk smiled as he held the prayer beads in his hand. Wisdom King is the one who understands the situation well. I have 3 candidates here and they are all on the mountain now. Oh. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. Aren't you holding a tablet in your hand? Don't you have a picture? The old monk paused for a moment before he sighed and said, The fated ones still have to be chosen by the wise king. Why does it feel like a blind date? Hellion Vivian muttered. Beligaju pulled her over and laughed. You're talking nonsense again. When the monks in the temple saw Beligaju walking over from afar, they all stopped what they were doing. They always had an illusion that although this man looked elegant and indifferent, under that perfect disguise, there was a familiar smell. With just one look, they could confirm that this man's sins were probably more than all of them combined. These 3 are all my disciples. The old monk brought Hellion Vivian to the backyard and let her look at the people who did not belong to the temple. They don't have any sins. It's just that every year there will be secular disciples sent to the mountain to cultivate. The wise king feels comfortable handing the children over to whoever he feels is safe. When the time comes, I will inform that person to pick them up. Hellion Vivian looked over and raised her eyebrows. Hellion Vivian was very relieved to leave it to this family. However, there was one thing that she didn't expect at all. It happened more than 10 days later. Chapter 11-12. Early in the morning, under the faint light of the sun, the top manager had pushed away Bailey Shangxia's work early and would not arrange any schedule for him before the afternoon. The little CEO had said that he would accompany the CEO's wife for a pregnancy checkup. After hearing this news, the senior executives of the Ju Wei Group, who were about to submit the report, all heaved a sigh of relief. The CEO's wife wanted a pregnancy checkup, which meant that the boss would not appear at the company's regular meeting on Monday. What a beautiful day. Hellion Vivian was also in a good mood. After all, this pregnancy was different from the previous ones. The baby was very obedient and there had never been any abnormalities. Except for the situation where the goldfish wanted to jump through the dragon's gate, everything was normal. The 2 little ones had never been to the pregnancy checkup room before, but with their high IQ, they knew what the procedure was as soon as they walked into the hospital. Hellion Vivian was half lying on the white bed. On the other side, 2 specialists were standing next to her, adjusting the equipment. Qingshan was worried that the baby would be nervous, so he stood by the bed and touched Hellion Vivian's stomach. Baby, be good. Do the checkup properly. When you come out, Big Brother will take you to eat ice cream. Speaking of this, little Qingshan was especially proud. In the future he would be someone who could be an elder brother. When the baby came out in the future, he would also wash the baby's hair and take care of him like a big brother. Bailey Shangxia stood on the other side of the bed and said with a cool expression, If you really can't stand others touching you, you can burn the equipment. When I was with your little brother in the past, we often scared the imperial doctors so much that they didn't dare to check the Empress's pulse. This is normal. Hellion Vivian. How is this normal? Bailey Shangxia saw that the baby did not respond and continued to encourage him. You don't have to worry about the consequences. Even if something happens, those stupid humans will definitely think that there is a problem with the equipment and it has nothing to do with you. Hellion Vivian did not know whether to laugh or cry. She always had the illusion that the baby had been raised astray before he was born. Baligaju also heard his eldest son's words at this time. He picked him up with an indifferent expression and casually threw him aside. The specialists who walked in were dumbfounded. Do what you have to do. With just a few words from Baligaju, the two experts immediately busied themselves, fearing that they would make any mistakes during the inspection. They even inquired about Hellion Vivian's usual eating habits. Finally, they had to do an ultrasound. This was a part of every pregnant woman's life. Bailey Shangxia was holding Qingchen's hand at the side. The two little mushrooms stared at Hellion Vivian as she was pushed in. After all, an expert was an expert. She could look at an ultrasound for a long time, so Hellion Vivian really thought that this baby would be like the two troublesome little guys and cause the hospital to directly cut off the power. Reality proved that this baby was indeed very obedient. She's full of vitality. She's healthier than most babies. You can tell from her tiny arms. As the specialist spoke, he smiled and pointed at the screen of the instrument. Madam, look, this is the fetus in your stomach. Not only Hellion Wei but even the two little ones had their eyes fixed on the grayish-white picture. A small head slightly bigger than a fist was curled up together with a small body. Baby. Qingchen was really happy. Her big eyes were fixed on the instrument and she looked extremely happy. Why isn't it moving? As the older brother, Bailey Shangxia frowned. He always felt that the baby was even weaker than his younger brother at that time. Should he give it some demonic energy? Or should he go and catch two ghost messengers for it to play with? On this side, the little prince of the demon world was seriously considering. On the other side, a certain highness had already seen through his thoughts. He picked him up and threw him aside. The specialist smiled and said, "It's not time for her to eat yet. She's sleeping. She'll wake up at noon. The fetus is like a baby. In the future, little Xiao, you have to talk to the baby more. In that case, she'll respond to you." Qingchen had been doing this all along. Her little head nodded vigorously and then she said, "I'll ask my brother to talk to the baby with me." Hearing this, the two specialists smiled at each other. No wonder the people on the internet liked this pair of brothers so much. No one would dislike such children. Just like that, Hellion Vivian finished her examination. Originally, there were no major problems during the entire process. Until when she was about to leave, one of the specialists smiled and said, "Madame Xiao is really lucky. You have two young masters and now you have a little daughter. In the future you will definitely be more and more considerate." Wait a minute. Daughter. Hellion Vivian's fingers paused. Are you saying that I'm pregnant with a girl? The specialist looked at Hellion Vivian's reaction and thought that he had said something that he shouldn't have said. He was still hesitating on how to answer. After all, a rich family like this favored boys over girls. He had seen many mothers-in-law follow them around. They took good care of their daughters-in-law, but when they saw that the child was a girl, they immediately ignored her and left her daughters-in-law on the hospital bed. They would rather spend their time playing cards than look at their granddaughter. Of course, there were also those who liked both boys and girls. He just didn't know which type of mother Xiao Ju was. Thinking of this, the specialist secretly glanced at Baligaju. Baligaju's handsome side profile also froze for a moment. A girl? This was something that Baligaju didn't expect. He had always been indifferent to children. This was the nature of a demon. Therefore, he didn't deliberately think about whether the baby in Weiwei's stomach was a boy or a girl. However, if it was a girl, it should be very similar to her. No wonder it was so obedient. Baligaju smiled and stroked Hellion Vivian's hair with his fingers. Isn't it good to have a daughter? The key is to send her to the temple to be a monk. Hellion Vivian wanted to cry but had no tears. She said to Baligaju in grief, "When the baby grows up, she will definitely ask me why I want a girl to be a monk." Bailey Jiaju imagined that scene and the smile on the corner of his mouth deepened. Hellion Vivian felt that His Highness was gloating, so she opened her mouth and bit him. However, His Highness had always been open-minded. Little Seven has been a monk since he was young. I don't see anything wrong with him. Little Seven is a boy and our daughter is a girl. Hellion Vivian shook her head. Oh no, my mind is now full of those little monks who stayed in Mount Intenia. All of them were bald. Our daughter will also be like that. Listening to the conversation between the two of them, the specialist was stunned again. Become a monk? Why? Could it be that the upper-class society now favored boys and made girls shave their heads and become monks? How scary. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.